This young man was clearly the weakest guide in the party, yet on his very first trip into the labyrinth, he forcibly saved the entire team. Labyrinths have always been layers of monsters and traps, and the adventurers who step into them usually fall into three categories. Warriors with powerful physiques who take the front line, priests who support the entire party with holy power, and the party's sole main damage dealer, the mage. And Kariel belonged to a fourth category. He had a special sensory ability, and people called him a guide. At this moment, these people were exploring a labyrinth. But right now, the labyrinth rats had become their greatest crisis. Because this was their first time entering a labyrinth, if they acted rashly now, it would very likely lead to a total party wipe. But just then, Kariel suddenly came over and said that if possible, he was willing to go first and see whether he could take down the labyrinth rats. However, his class was guide, whose duty was to lead the way and relay information. And in terms of combat ability, a guide was almost no different from an ordinary person. Adventurers were usually divided by rank, from beginner to intermediate to advanced, and a guide's combat power basically stopped at novice level. In other words, Kariel had no reason at all that required him to join the fight, but he understood the habits of labyrinth rats, so he wanted to gamble once. Because they lived in the dim labyrinth for long periods, they would not force their way into brightly lit places. So as long as he used himself as bait to lure them over, then lit the lantern the instant they got close, the strong light would instantly scorch their eyes. But even though he had already prepared himself mentally, this darkness still made Kariel feel chilled. As the giant rat rapidly closed in, Kariel immediately opened the lantern in his hand. At the moment the light burst forth, it stabbed straight into the giant rat's eyes. Kariel immediately seized that opening. His movements were extremely fast, and the short blade thrust out almost at the same time. The next second, the short blade drove viciously into the monster's body. After killing the monster, Kariel finally slowly let out a breath. The priest was dumbfounded and could not help exclaiming, "So lanterns can be used like that too?" But for a low-level monster like a labyrinth rat, most adventurers can deal with it. But before they had time to be happy, another monster instantly appeared behind him. When the priestess noticed it, her face instantly turned pale, and she shouted in terror, "Kariel, watch out behind you." The moment her words fell, just as Kariel turned his head, he saw that the labyrinth rat had already been burned inside and out by flames. And the one who had released the flames was Kariel's childhood friend, Reina. "We agreed earlier that we would fight together, Kariel. Why are you acting on your own? We only separated a few years ago and only recently met again, and I never expected you to have become this impulsive. Put that aside for now. I just saved you, and you do not even have a single word of thanks?" Kariel froze for a moment, then immediately thanked Reina. "Are you alright? I felt from the start that you seemed distracted, and the fact that you became a guide is strange in itself. You used to say you wanted to become a hero, so how did you suddenly change your mind? Could it be because of that incident?" Kariel's childhood dream really had been to become a hero. It was not until the day the village was attacked by monsters that he truly understood. Because he was too weak, he could do nothing. That sense of powerlessness was carved deeply into Kariel's heart. Later, he came to accept that maybe he could not become a hero, but continuing on as a guide was not so bad either. Hearing this, Reina became even more certain of her guess. "But why did you go face the labyrinth rat alone just now? You clearly know you are not suited for battle. At critical moments, someone has to step forward. I cannot let my past weakness keep me from doing anything forever." After hearing those words, Reina's gaze noticeably softened. "Since we have rested enough, we should go complete this commission now. To find Mandrake." Most adventurers made their living through commissions, and newcomers like them had to form a party if they wanted to enter a labyrinth. "But first, let's go meet up with the group over there." Just as the two were preparing to set off, Kariel suddenly felt that something deeper in the labyrinth was not right. But for the moment, they still decided to confirm their position first, then go look for the Mandrake. Relying on Kariel's sensing ability, he locked onto the general direction of his companions. The warrior and the priest should still be investigating Area C. Meanwhile, the warrior had already made a rough inspection of the area. Just then, when he turned his head, a box suddenly entered his sight. He immediately walked toward the box. But the priest at once gave a cautious warning. Without a guide present, it was best not to touch things recklessly. Because treasure chests in labyrinths were not necessarily treasure, they could also be traps. The scene shifted, and Kariel said that through sensing the airflow around him, he could further pinpoint the location of the Mandrake. Hearing that, Reina thought for a moment and then cast a sensory enhancement spell. It could strengthen a person's senses for a certain period of time. While thanking Reina, Kariel also said that he would be able to find the Mandrake very soon. Then, he pointed in the direction from which the smell was coming. Soon enough, the two of them really did find the place where the Mandrake was. But the deeper they went into the labyrinth, the stronger that smell became, mixed with a nauseating stench, and it was clearly coming from nearby. Seeing how tightly wound Kariel looked, as if he might explode at any moment, Reina felt he had suddenly become hard to get along with. She simply changed the subject. Kariel, have you heard? The royal family has been suppressing bandit groups lately. I heard. But I also heard that several members of one of the bandit groups still have not been caught. So the extermination force is still hunting them down. And it is said that even a hero has been deployed. There have also been recent cases of merchants going missing. So it is not impossible that they are near the labyrinth. A ruin-like labyrinth like this is actually quite suitable for use as a base. So from here on, we have to be even more careful. After hearing that, Reina deliberately teased him. Don't be scared. Big sister will protect you when the time comes. Just then, Kariel suddenly smelled an even stronger stench. Reina awkwardly explained that she had clearly taken a bath before leaving that morning. Kariel's eyes suddenly widened, and he quietly told her that was the smell of corpses. The two of them then immediately headed in the direction the smell was coming from. When they arrived near a sewer, looking down, they saw that a large number of corpses were actually floating on the water. This sudden sight made Kariel instantly realize that the situation now was extremely dangerous. Before the bandits discovered them, he had to reunite with his companions as quickly as possible if they were to have even a sliver of a chance to survive. Meanwhile, the priest was urging the warrior, saying that the most important thing now was to find the mandrake first. But the atmosphere here made her more and more uneasy the longer she stayed, and even the sound of the box being open made her shudder in fright. The warrior, however, said that opening a box was nothing to him. But when the priest looked carefully, she had the distinct feeling that this place seemed to connect to another space. So she asked the warrior whether they should go in and check once more. Could that sound just now have come from in here as well? With that question in mind, she asked the warrior again whether he had heard that sound just now. But the warrior gave no response at all. She had no choice but to reach out and pat him on the shoulder. The next second, the warrior's expression twisted, and his whole body collapsed straight to the ground. If he was not detoxified in time, he really would die. What she could not understand was that the trap had clearly not been triggered. So where exactly had that poisoned arrow come from? Before she could figure it out, a figure suddenly rushed up and slammed her head hard against the ground. At the moment the dagger was about to plunge into the priest's forehead, she actually forced her palm against the blade and stopped it. The bandit said coldly, "You really don't know what's good for you. We could have evacuated this base today, but you little rats just had to crawl in here. Stop struggling. I'll make your death quick." With that, he viciously stabbed the dagger toward the priestess again. Just then, Kariel suddenly rushed out and wrapped his arms around the bandit from the waist, twisted with the momentum, and directly threw him over his shoulder, slamming him heavily onto the ground. He immediately circled behind the man, and the next second locked his joints in a crucifix hold, strangling him so tightly that he could not move, while loudly shouting to Reina, "Quick, use magic." Before the words had even finished, Reina had already compressed mana into her palm. In an instant, an arcane pulse shot out like an arrow, striking the bandit with precision and knocking him unconscious on the spot. While Kariel treated the priest's wounds, Reina wondered in confusion. He could actually use holy power too. Kariel, however, said that he could only stop the bleeding and could do nothing else. But the bigger problem now was that both the warrior and the priest had been poisoned, so they had to find a way to leave this place immediately. Then Reina said that she would use magic to transport one person first, and Kariel would take care of the other. The moment those words left her mouth, the bandit revealed a sinister smile, because his companions would arrive here very soon. So if they surrendered now, they could die without pain. On the surface, it sounded like an attempt to scare them. But judging from the situation, what that guy said was probably true. Those are things stolen from merchants. It looks like they really have been using this place as a temporary base. Worse still, voices talking in the distance could already be faintly heard. Damn it, what am I supposed to do now? If I leave those two behind, they will definitely die here. But can I really save them? I'm just a guide. At this moment, Kariel did not even dare look into the priest's eyes, because he did not dare confront the deepest fear in his heart. He knew full well that staring would only make it more painful. Yet they were looking at him with those "please save me" eyes. Child, have you forgotten? On the day the monsters attacked the village, didn't you also turn a blind eye to that child? That's impossible. How could I have done something like that? Listen carefully. Kariel, you are not a hero. Saving people is something only the strong should do. You are weak, so just pretend you didn't see anything. Then you won't suffer. Trash like me, how could I possibly save them? Just as Kariel was being torn apart by his memories to the brink of collapse, Reina directly cut him off. Get a hold of yourself. This is not the time to sink into the past. Kariel abruptly came back to himself and immediately apologized to Reina. But in a situation like this, there must still be a way to get out alive. The other side is an experienced bandit group. We have 2 wounded here, and right now only Reina can fight. But this is a labyrinth. Maybe that method can work. As Reina listened to him muttering to himself, her gaze darkened, filled with confusion. Kariel then lowered his voice and said that from this point on, everything should go according to his plan. Not long after, the sound of the bandits' footsteps came clearly into his ears. The reason they were in such a hurry was because the one chasing them was the very hero who had previously wounded their leader. Just then, Kariel suddenly stood in front of them. Several bandits were stunned and even suspected that he was the hero. But after carefully sizing up his build, they immediately denied it. But when they saw the bag in his hand, one of the bandits flew into a rage on the spot and shouted that they should all attack together. But the bandit leader said, "We're in a hurry right now. There's no need to waste time on meaningless conflict. Hand over the thing, and I'll let you leave." Kariel sneered inwardly. These bandits made it sound nice. But the moment he handed it over, the next thing would be silencing them. Because people like this never kept their word. But Kariel already had a plan. He raised his hand and directly threw the bag over. Sure enough, when the bandits saw him throw the bag, one of them immediately said that they would not leave any witnesses alive. Just then, a fireball suddenly shot straight toward him. Kariel had no time to react, and his whole body instantly froze. With a loud bang, the place where the bandits were standing exploded outright. But Kariel still did not dare relax. If they could not wipe them out in one wave, then the two of them would have a hard time dealing with the whole bandit group afterward. Sure enough, after being hit by the fireball, they looked disheveled, but they still clearly had strength left. So the first plan was not going to succeed that easily after all, which meant they could only activate the backup plan. And that attack just now had not been wasted either. At the very least, it had weakened several of the bandits and that mage. Having suffered from a sneak attack before, the bandits were especially cautious as they gave chase. That boy's companion could appear again at any moment. Only then did Kariel realize that his legs were trembling uncontrollably. But if he could just hold on a little longer, he would reach that spot. But these people gave him no chance to escape. The mage gathered a fireball in his palm, ready to launch it at any moment. And in his current condition, there was no way he could dodge it. Just then, Reina appeared in time and quickly formed signs with both hands to cast a spell. At the moment the spell was completed, the lead bandit's heart suddenly sank, and he knew something was wrong. He thought the spell was aimed at him, but in the next second, a boulder the size of a small hill directly blocked the tunnel entrance. Instead of getting angry, the bandit laughed, because he had already seen through it. This kid wanted to use himself as bait in exchange for his companions' lives. "You don't actually think we can't smash through this wall, do you? I just think it'll be more interesting to kill the fast-running little rat first." Looking at his smug smile, Kariel did not retreat. Because before this, the two of them had already moved their companions to safety, and he had deliberately lured them into the sealed area. But Reina had said at the time, blocking the passage is meaningless. "Isn't this just using you as bait?" Kariel had replied, "That's only the first step. The real key is the second step. That sensory amplification spell you used before. If it can be used to block hearing, then we can turn this around with that." Before the bandits could figure out what Kariel intended to do, the mandrake had already become the target. Once pulled out, it would turn into a screaming monster. Anyone who heard that scream would suffer hallucinations and vomiting, and in severe cases, could even die on the spot. The next second, Kariel yanked out the mandrake. The seemingly harmless mandrake instantly became demonic, and a scream exploded out, its sound waves nearly filling the entire passage. But Kariel had prepared for this and immediately shut off his own hearing. Meanwhile, the man still hurrying on his way also sensed at that moment that something nearby was wrong. The bandit mage forced himself to recover, and in the next second used magic to slice the mandrake in half. But in that instant, he lost track of Kariel's position. He had just wanted to warn his companions to be careful, when in the blink of an eye, his cheek was struck by a heavy blow that twisted it out of shape. The mandrake screamed weakened a mage's resistance, so Kariel had to deal with the mage first, and then take care of the remaining bandits one by one. He drove a knee strike straight up, and coldly demanded, "Where are the others?" But before the other man could answer, another bandit had already charged in with a powerful punch. Kariel dropped his weight and ducked low, slipping past the force of the punch, then immediately wrapped his arms around the man's waist, and used the momentum to slam him hard against the wall. The dazed bandit flew into a rage, raising his hand to deliver a deadly blow, but Kariel cleanly dodged again, and right after that, Kariel's fist pressed directly against his throat. At the same time, the bandit's hands clawed toward his face, but the man had already been affected by the mandrake, and his movements were in disarray. And at this moment, Kariel had completely gained the upper hand. In the end, after a bout of close-quarters grappling, the bandit died on the spot. Not long afterward, the group finally reunited. Kariel also secretly felt relieved. The plan had actually succeeded. But the price was that Reina's magic power had been almost completely drained. Without a mage like Reina, he would never even have dared to think of making such a plan. But Reina said that the way Kariel had been today was very much like a true hero. Hearing those words, his heart grew warm. He thought that after they got out, he would definitely have a proper talk with Reina. But just as Reina thought they were about to escape, Kariel saw what seemed to be a figure standing in the direction of the exit. A sense of foreboding instantly crawled up his spine. He immediately turned and shouted into the labyrinth, telling Reina to retreat at once and hide deeper inside. But in the next second, he felt something cut through the air toward him. In the blink of an eye, a magic crystal was hurled right in front of him. At the critical moment, Reina used the last of her magic power to instantly transfer the magic crystal to the other side. But the aftershock of the explosion still left Kariel covered in injuries. That attack, that was the power of a magic crystal. The one who came must be the bandit leader. Just now, Reina protected me, so she must have suffered magical backlash. I have to get up immediately. But before he could rise, the leader hit him head-on with a kick. When the leader came closer and looked, he discovered that Kariel was only a guide. That made him feel the magic crystal had been wasted, but he had no time to bother with someone like that. So he turned directly and fixed his target on Reina. And as he stared at that receding figure, Kariel's consciousness began to sink little by little. All kinds of emotions tore through his mind. Why was he saving people, exactly? To be praised? Or because he had wanted to become a hero ever since childhood? Or was it for revenge against monsters? But he could not find the answer. But even without an answer, did saving people really have to have a reason? You've always been helping others, and never asked for anything in return. Most importantly, wasn't the reason you wanted to become a hero in the first place also to save people? But no matter what I do, a guide cannot change the outcome in the end. And no matter how hard I struggle, I can never reach a powerful mage like you. That's why I trained my body every day and forced myself to become stronger, and also studied the knowledge needed for adventuring. I just wanted to take back that feeling of helplessness, that feeling of being unable to do anything. But now, my heart is still being torn in two. But I'm also becoming more and more certain that you can no longer pretend not to see. The proof is your actions. You keep using action to suppress your fear. Maybe that is what courage is. In the next instant, Kariel's eyes flew wide open, and he suddenly reached out and grabbed the bandit leader. The bandit leader froze for a moment. This guy still had strength left? He immediately lashed out with a savage kick. Then he turned and roared, "I don't have time to deal with a guide like you." Because he had to get rid of the mage first. Kariel gritted his teeth and forced his body upright. And at that moment, he clearly saw the location of the leader's wound. His gaze became exceptionally firm. To me, what matters now is not strength. Not long afterward, the bandit leader indeed found Reina. Faced with this mage, he had to eliminate her completely. But Reina only weakly whispered Kariel's name. In the leader's eyes, there was no one left who could save her. He raised his hand, about to finish her off directly. At that critical instant, Kariel charged up and landed a punch precisely on the leader's wound. Tearing pain instantly exploded, making the leader's condition even worse. He forcefully suppressed the pain, only for it to be replaced by fury. He swung a heavy punch in retaliation. That punch sent Kariel flying several meters. But at the same time, the leader's injuries also worsened. Can't you just lie there obediently? Why insist on struggling like this for nothing? I've changed my mind. I'll kill you first. Trash like weeds has to be uprooted first. Faced with his rage, Kariel had already made his choice. What matters is not finding a proper reason, but that my instincts are forcing me to do this right now. What surprised the bandit leader was that this guide could actually use divine power. So what if you can? You can't change the outcome. He's right, the warrior and priest are both badly injured, and Reina has also fallen into a deep coma. But as long as the hero chasing them is still on the way, I have to hold out until that moment. Kariel slammed his foot into the ground and forced himself toward the bandit leader. As he charged, he calculated that he would first pretend to make a strong attack from the left. Just as expected, the bandit leader's rhythm was thrown off. Seizing that instant, Kariel turned and changed direction, launching a surprise punch from the other side. The leader reacted at once, so it was a feint. Kariel tried to draw his blade, only to discover that the short knife had already broken in the impact. Since there was no knife, then he would strike only at the man's weak points. The next second, the bandit leader caught his fist in one hand, and with the other, slammed a heavy punch into Kariel's face. Kariel instantly lost his footing, and the leader followed up with a knee strike that crashed hard into his face. The blow was so heavy that Kariel nearly blacked out. After landing the hit, the leader sneered, "You really think that because you got lucky and hit me once, you can win?" Kariel clenched his teeth and roared inwardly, "I can't go down." He squeezed out the last of his strength and threw himself at the bandit leader again. The leader looked at him and instead found it laughable. This kid was pitifully stupid. "I thought you had some skill. Now I can finally see it clearly. You're just stalling for time. You want to rely on this kind of desperate clinging, to hold out until the hero appears, right? I was in a hurry and originally planned to let you live a little longer, but I've changed my mind. You're even more troublesome than the mage. Even if it wastes time, I'll kill all of you before I leave." At this moment, Kariel no longer held any hope, because his body had completely reached its limit. He could only say sorry to Reyna in his heart. The bandit leader picked up a rock and smashed it down toward his head. This dream should wake up now. A person like that can make everyone feel at ease by name alone, and that is why such a being is called a hero. At the line between life and death, a knight instantly stepped in front of Kariel. Complex emotions rushed up into Kariel's throat, and his eyes instantly grew hot. In the next second, the knight suddenly tightened his fingers and forcefully gripped the bandit's hand. The crisp sound of bones cracking rang out. The intense pain made the leader let out a muffled groan. He immediately pulled back and retreated, roaring, "You ignore the Demon King, yet you insist on coming after a bandit like me? It's all because of this damned guide. I wasted too much time on him." The knight replied coldly, "You should know that the Demon King has already been dealt with. Now scum like you are the biggest problem." The knight's gaze was like a blade as he fixed it on the leader, then threw a punch. That overwhelming force made the leader's eyes roll back, and he dropped to his knees on the spot. After dealing with the leader, the knight turned his gaze back to Kariel. "You're badly injured. You must go to the cathedral for treatment immediately." But at this moment, Kariel was more concerned about Reyna and the others. He struggled to raise a hand and pointed not far away. "Over there, my companions. Save them first." As soon as the words fell, Kariel's vision went black, and his whole body collapsed into the knight's arms. The scene shifted to a church on the outskirts of the city. When he slowly opened his eyes, he jolted awake, his mind full of questions. What shocked him even more was that his body did not hurt at all. At that moment, a voice came from beside him. "You were unconscious for 2 days. Your companions are all still being treated, but they are now out of danger." Hearing those words, Kariel finally let out a complete sigh of relief. Then the knight continued, "I've been waiting for you to wake up. There are some things I must tell you. First, my name is Akela. I belong to the royal army and am responsible for handling various incidents. As you know, the world is more peaceful now than in the past, but dark forces are still growing. We received reports. Unprecedented monsters have appeared in the forest, along with a suspicious organization of unclear motives and so-called hunters. They not only hunt monsters, they even go after heroes as well." Hearing that, Kariel said softly, "It seems that now that the Demon King is gone, there's even more trouble instead. Their existence is like filling the vacancy left behind by the Demon King. A few days ago, I specifically investigated what happened in the labyrinth. That move you pulled with the Mandrake was both clever and ruthless, excellent. Thanks to you, we not only captured the leader, but also wiped out all the bandits in the labyrinth in one go. And in the storms to come, there will definitely be situations that cannot be solved by strength alone. So my journey needs a guide like you. Are you willing to join me?" Kariel froze on the spot. Carry out missions together with the hero? Was this real? He asked instinctively. "Then where are we going?" Akela replied, "Our destination is the Golem Forest." Just as Akela was about to continue, Reyna suddenly pushed the door open and walked in. "I accidentally overheard your conversation. So, hero, I want to adventure with you too. That guy Kariel is especially unreliable. Someone has to keep an eye on him. And besides, no smart person would leave me behind, because every adventuring party needs a mage." And so, after a brief discussion between the two, it was not long before they set off together on a new journey. "So this is the Golem Forest, right? The reason I agreed to travel with the hero is because he gave me hope. If I follow the hero, I'll become stronger. Someday, I'm going to kill that monster with my own hands." Akela told Kariel to lead the way for them. Kariel answered, but then turned his gaze toward Reyna. At the same time, Reyna, who had still been grinning foolishly, instantly froze and became terribly awkward. She quickly explained, "Just now I heard you mention golems. Actually, golems can be pretty cute too. I even made one in magic class before." But Kariel felt that Reyna's train of thought was way too random. When normal people heard golem, they only thought of something terrifying. If you're expecting them to be cute, you may be disappointed. Not long afterward, the three of them made their way deep into the canyon. After walking for so long, Reyna could not help asking, why had they still not seen any golems? Kariel explained, "This is the workers' passage. Once we reach the quarry, we should be able to see golems. But don't expect any little cuties. The golems there are naturally formed. Golems made by mages are limited by magical power, so they are small. But natural golems come from enormous pure magic stones. This mine has a lot of magic stone, so there should also be many of them." Hearing this, Akela finally understood how the name Golem Forest had come about. At that moment, a masked man nearby was muttering to himself in a low voice, acting suspiciously. Then he cautiously slipped into a cave. Just as the group was still discussing the possibility of a suspicious person, they happened to catch that fellow in the middle of his sneaky behavior. When they approached the masked man, He did not say a word and turned to run, shouting as he ran, "Why are you chasing me?" But as he kept running, he ended up cornering himself in a dead end. Kariel and the others immediately caught up as well, but after seeing them, the man did not panic at all. Instead, he smiled smugly. That smile made Kariel frown at once. He had the strange feeling that he had seen this man's movement somewhere before. Before Akela could figure out the situation, the chests of the surrounding golems suddenly lit up blue and they began to awaken. The masked man shouted arrogantly, "I lure you here on purpose." When Rena saw that enormous golem, she was so shocked she could not speak. Kariel immediately told her not to panic. Natural golems normally did not attack humans on their own. But reality struck him in the face almost immediately. Akela even thought the golem was about to give him a high five. And in the next second, the two of them panicked on the spot and retreated repeatedly. But instead of retreating, Akela advanced and took the initiative to meet it head-on. He shot forward like an arrow, and actually received the golem's attack with his bare hands. With a thunderous crash, the golem's right arm was blown apart by him. He turned back and asked the guide, "What exactly is going on?" Kariel said in a low voice, "Someone must be controlling the golem core, and now they had to find a way to divert the enemy's attention." Meanwhile, because the golem's right arm had been destroyed, the two masked men immediately synchronized control of the left arm and launched a fierce attack on Akela. Looking at the hero standing before the golem, even the masked man could not help being shocked. He could shatter a golem's arm barehanded? His heart sank. This man had to be killed first. In the next second, the gigantic palm slammed down viciously toward Akela. Akela knew clearly that continuing to take it head-on was too risky, so he had to switch tactics. He leaped fiercely onto the golem's arm, dodging continuously amid the barrage of attacks, and used the momentum to sprint upward along the arm. He weaved and darted among the giant limbs, and finally landed steadily on the golem's shoulder. Kariel and Reyna stared in stunned amazement. Even the two people controlling the golem were dumbstruck. One masked man said in panic, "Should we go out and fight him?" The other masked man immediately snapped, "We are golem users. We never fight in person." Two new golems appeared before Akela. Even Akela could not help being briefly stunned. In order to catch the people controlling the golems, he first had to clear away the obstacles in front of him. In the next second, he charged straight toward the golem above. A beam of light suddenly shot from the golem's chest. He dodged several attacks in succession, seized an opening, and instantly closed in on the golem. A flash of light appeared, and a treasured sword formed in his hand. Then with a single horizontal slash, he cut the golem cleanly in half at the waist. Immediately after, he switched targets without the slightest pause. In the blink of an eye, he leaped onto another golem's head and twisted fiercely with both hands. That savage strength instantly tore the golem's head off. Watching him easily destroy two golems, the two masked men were completely shaken, but they still felt that at least hiding here was relatively safe. But just then, they discovered that figure had suddenly vanished. In the next second, he appeared silently right in front of them. Meanwhile, as Kariel watched Akela fight, he felt that this was exactly the hero from the dreams of his childhood. He immediately said to Reyna, "Right now we need to focus on chasing that masked man." But Reyna could not maintain two spells at once, so for the moment, they truly had no good way to pursue him. Kariel then suggested that Reyna ride on his back and cast her spell. Reyna's face turned red all at once. But Kariel suddenly said that he had a better idea. He planned to ride the broom himself and have Reyna control the direction. In the blink of an eye, he charged straight at the masked man on the broom. But when he got close to the target, he suddenly stumbled and lost balance, and the two of them crashed into each other on the spot, then fell heavily to the ground. Just as Kariel was about to get up, the masked man struck straight at him. But Kariel cleanly dodged the attack, then pinned the masked man to the ground in return, while casually grabbing the scattered bag nearby. Holding his faintly aching shoulder, he asked Reyna whether she was angry and had deliberately made him fall. Reyna hurriedly said that her spell casting was not very stable right now, and guiltily said that she would never do such a thing. Only when Kariel moved closer to her did he notice something strange about her hand. Reyna explained that it was an injury left from the labyrinth, and because everything had been so urgent at the time, it had left a scar like a burn. Only then did Kariel understand why the flight had been so unstable just now. He took Reyna's hand in one grasp and began stopping the bleeding and treating her injury, and also apologized to her for what he had said earlier. That perfectly gentle warmth made the corners of Reyna's mouth relax unconsciously. At this moment, the two of them turned their heads together and looked in the direction of the masked man. Kariel coldly questioned him, "What exactly is this bag for?" But a sudden disturbance interrupted him. He looked toward the source of the sound and saw that it was Akela. Akela said he had already locked onto the enemy's position. They were hiding inside a barrier. If they forced their way in, the people inside the barrier would die on the spot, and then they would get no information. The best method was to make them afraid to maintain the barrier. Kariel immediately looked at Reina and asked whether she had any magic that could disable a barrier, but Reina said she had not learned that kind of spell yet. Kariel looked around, trying to find another method. He saw a pile of flour stacked nearby, and his mind lit up at once. In that case, maybe flour can do it. He turned to Reina and said, "The injury on your hand looks like a burn. When magic is overused, the hands heat up, which means the circulation of magical power generates heat, and that's why you were burned when you touched the magic circle. If that's the case, then we can make them too afraid to use magical power." The two inside the barrier had originally thought that as long as they held their ground, victory was certain. But in the next second, a cloud of white powder exploded before their eyes. At first they thought it was a smokescreen, but on closer look, it was actually flour. If they kept using magic, it could trigger an explosion. At that moment, Kariel's voice came from outside. "You should know very well. When fine dust encounters heat, it can cause a dust explosion. The circulation of magical power also generates heat. If you still dare to use magic under these conditions, I won't stop you." The people inside the barrier began to waver. "At this rate, we won't be able to hold out until that guy gets here." At the same time, a figure slowly emerged from the cave. He was even muttering under his breath that it was about time for him to make his move. At this moment, a mysterious person reported coldly that he had searched the entire nearby forest. "There are no spellcasters around. It seems we came too late. It's no big deal. From now on, we only need to stay 2 steps ahead of them." Meanwhile, the group rode in a carriage, moving forward slowly. What relieved Kariel was that the enemy had not held out long before surrendering. A few hours earlier, Akela had interrogated the masked man while holding a piece of corrupted matter, and it had also been confirmed. Contaminating the core would cause golems to begin attacking humans, and divine power could separate or purify part of a corrupted substance. Next, Akela first purified the corrupted golems, and then escorted the masked man to a nearby church for further interrogation. But just as Kariel wanted to get some proper rest, the carriage suddenly stopped, and the violent jolt shook him awake at once. He looked up, and saw a group of bandits blocking the road. The bandit leader shouted arrogantly, "If you want to live, get off the carriage and surrender." Akela slowly jumped down from the carriage. The bandits froze the instant they made out his figure. Then they threatened again, "If you dare make a move and endanger the hostages, everyone dies." In this situation, Akela decided to hold back for the moment, because one of his friends had already been tracking this group of bandits for several days. Just then, a black shadow appeared behind the bald bandit. In an instant, it opened a hole in his head. But the surrounding bandits could not even see where the shadow was. Akela seized the chance to deal with one of the bandits, then turned and lunged at the bandit chief, delivering a fatal blow. After all the hostages had been rescued, Reina instinctively covered her nose. At the sight of the blood everywhere, Kariel told her to go back into the carriage first. But what Kariel cared about more was, who exactly was that man in black? The man in black then introduced himself. His name was Ram, known as the Shadow Hero. Ram added that when he had first set out on the path of the hero, Akela had helped him a great deal. That immediately piqued Kariel's interest. Reina explained to him, "Kariel, you may not know this yet. The kind of hero you have in mind is the one who fights the Demon King. That kind of hero is chosen by the Holy Sword. But the more common kind of hero is actually a title granted by the king. They are given exclusive epithets based on their respective abilities. Ram's epithet is Shadow, because he excels at stealth and assassination rather than frontal combat." After that, the two of them grew curious about Akela's epithet as well. Akela said that he was called the Tracker, because he had a sharp sense of smell and exceptional martial skill. Not only them, but the other heroes all had corresponding titles as well, such as Berserker and Arbiter, and also the Holy Sword hero who subjugates the Demon King. So in the end, some heroes serve under the king and are responsible for maintaining stability in their regions. And people like the Holy Sword hero, whose goal is to kill the Demon King, are equally revered, but their mission is entirely different. Kariel had misunderstood before because the Holy Sword hero became far too famous after defeating the Demon King. And as for those heroes with epithets, unless someone deliberately looked into them, their deeds were not widely known. Hearing this, a thought arose in Kariel's heart. He hoped that one day he could meet all the heroes. Rum said, "If you're lucky enough, you may get to meet them very soon. Because all heroes will soon join the Holy Sword recovery mission. But the Holy Sword only appears when a Demon King is born. Does that mean the Demon King is coming back?" Rum suddenly changed his tone and said he was only joking. But Akela said in a deep voice, "There was no need to worry now, because the Demon King was already dead. Thinking too much will only give us a headache. We need to focus on what comes next." "But Akela, what exactly is this incident? Is it related to you teaming up with Rum?" "Yes, this is the case we're here to handle. There have been repeated disappearances in this forest. This forest is dark forever, regardless of day or night. That's why we asked Rum, who excels in dark environments, to come with us. But for now, let's go to the village that sent the distress call. At this moment, Reina turned to look at Kariel, who was facing out beside her. She frowned and asked, "Kariel, did you notice something?" Kariel said, "These disappearances may not be as simple as being the work of magical beasts. First we ran into sorcerers, then bandits. Everyone we've encountered has been human, not magical beasts. Is that really just a coincidence?" After hearing Kariel's reasoning, Reina suppressed her emotions and said that solving the problem was what mattered most right now. "Don't worry. You're a guide, so you won't be at a disadvantage against humans. And thanks to you, we were able to catch those sorcerers so quickly." But Kariel still felt that something was off here, because humans could not possibly stay active in this forest of eternal night for long. The clearer that thought became, the more certain he was. Whoever had arranged things into a setup like this was most likely a magical beast. Afterward, the villagers actively cooperated with their investigation. After exchanging a few simple greetings, the village chief told them to rest for a while first. But Kariel wanted to move things along as quickly as possible and at least conduct a preliminary investigation today. Before long, the village chief called over several villagers. A female villager gave a brief introduction first. She said that her son had been missing in the forest for 3 days. Akela immediately asked, "Can you tell us exactly what happened in detail?" To be precise, it was 3 days ago when we were passing through the forest. There have been frequent disappearances in this forest over the past few months, so at the time I was holding tightly to his hand the whole time. I clearly never let go, but he suddenly disappeared. Akela pressed further, "Did he vanish right before your eyes?" "More accurately, I heard some kind of sound, and then I lost consciousness. When I woke up, the child was gone. The sound you heard was probably the cry of a monster." Meanwhile, Kariel was also gathering information at the same time. A villager named Martin said that he had gone into the forest for 3 days looking for the missing people, but he had wandered through the forest for an entire day and found almost nothing, except that he had vaguely seen the outline of a monster in the distance. Reina immediately cut in. "Since you saw its outline, what exactly did it look like?" Martin recalled that it had something like a snake's tail, with an upper body resembling a human's. After repeatedly comparing the clues, Kariel concluded that the thing in the forest might be a lamia, but Reina did not seem to agree. Just as the two of them were about to start arguing, Akela and the others walked over. Rum said, "Whatever kind of monster it is, we should investigate further before reaching a conclusion." As soon as he said that, the two of them temporarily put the argument aside. But at that moment, Kariel noticed that something seemed a little off about Reina's voice. Was she nervous? Or had she caught a chill? In the blink of an eye, it was the next day, and the two of them headed to the meeting point. And their top priority right now was to find the child and eliminate the monster. But from this point on, they had to split into 2 groups to search. Kariel felt that he should be in the same group as Reina. This mission was focused on investigation, not brute force. The areas that had already been searched needed to be marked so that everyone could keep their progress synchronized. The clues in the forest were indeed too vague, so Ram and the others decided to look for the lake first, since a lamia would most likely appear near a water source. Because Akela could judge the direction of the lake by its scent, and there were many lakes in this area, the smell of moisture was drifting from over there, though it was a bit far away. After confirming the direction, Rum decided to go over first and scout it out. Rum possessed the ability to interact with shadows, and he could move through them, but he could only bring that ability to its fullest extent in a place with a lake. But the lake before them seemed to have already dried up, leaving only a cracked lake bed. Meanwhile, Reina could not help complaining. They had been searching for so long and still had found nothing at all. But Kariel believed that there might still be areas they had not covered. He looked up above the treetops. "We've been ignoring the high ground this whole time. The tree trunks in this forest are thick, and the branches are unusually dense. Countless branches are intertwined together, almost like a platform, which is why the forest is so dark. And these marks look like claw traces left behind by something climbing." But who should go up to investigate became the problem. Visibility was poor up high, and it would be easy to be ambushed. But Reina still decided, with the help of magic, to go up alone and take a look first. As she rose into midair, she discovered a huge crack in the center of the branch platform, then slipped into the hollow tree and began to investigate. But she still could not help worrying. What if something went wrong again? The inside of the tree hollow was not what she had imagined. There was almost nothing visible inside, as if it were cut off from the outside world, with even the air feeling heavy and stifling. Back at the Magic Academy, the private use of night vision magic had been strictly forbidden, and as a model student, Reina had never once broken the rules, so she was completely unaccustomed to seeing in the dark, and only when moonlight filtered in through the gaps in the branches did this place avoid becoming completely black. She deliberately dimmed her magical light source. If it was too bright, it would hurt her eyes and might also alert the monster. Her heart was pounding hard, absurdly loud. It was so quiet here that even footsteps were perfectly clear, and the enclosed space amplified every sound. Reina was so tense that she could sense every tiny movement she made, yet she overlooked the most important thing. She had not made proper use of her sense of smell. But that nauseating odor still forced its way into her nose. And at some point, the smell had become familiar. The smell of corpses, mixed with rot and blood, growing stronger and stronger. That smell had clearly been there all along, yet she had only noticed it now. Could her cold have dulled her sense of smell? She immediately decided to retreat first. The monster was very likely nearby. But just as she was about to leave, the sight before her instantly made her hair stand on end. Faced with such a thing, Reina's heartbeat instead seemed to stop for half a beat. What replaced it was a heavy pounding, like a hammer smashing against her chest. Again and again, shaking her with pain. Reina could barely breathe, and in her heart she prayed for it to stop sounding. She was afraid her heartbeat would expose her position and lure the monster over. She curled up in frozen place for a long time, before she finally managed to calm herself down a little. And when she finally gathered the courage and prepared to leave at once, an even more horrifying scene appeared. Her whole body was nailed to the spot, and Reina felt as though she had locked eyes with something. But she could not tell what kind of monster it was at all. In an instant, her body could not move at all. She did not know whether this was her body's instinctive reaction, or the monster's special ability. She forcibly cast a defensive spell, and only then barely managed to escape from the monster's jaws. Meanwhile, Kariel was still anxiously waiting beneath the tree. It's already been so long. She was only supposed to go up and take a look. Why hasn't Reina come down yet? Looks like I need to meet up with the heroes first, then go up together. Suddenly, a strange noise came from the distance, and the two immediately grew alert. Rum suggested going to the guide first to check the situation. At the same time, Kariel also heard the sound, and he suddenly turned his head. What was falling from the air was Reina. In the next second, Kariel sprinted madly toward where Reina would land. At the instant she was about to hit the ground, Kariel forcibly caught her. Looking at Reina's face covered in wounds, his voice tightened uncontrollably. What happened? But Reina gave no response. So Kariel immediately decided to take her for treatment first. Only after lying on the bed did Reina speak in broken fragments. She had encountered a monster. At the instant she was seized above, she had cast a defensive spell, and then lost consciousness. When she woke up, she found that she was being carried away in the monster's jaws. She seized the chance to cast magic onto the ground and break free, and that was how she escaped. Rum said, "Sorry to ask this, but why didn't the monster just eat Miss Reina directly?" Kariel answered, "Most likely it happened while she was in a hallucinatory state. That behavior was more like the monster storing food. Next, we have to find those children as quickly as possible." Seeing Kariel turn to leave, Reina forced out a smile and softly told him to make sure he came back safely. The very purpose of a guide's existence is to cut off uncontrollable variables in advance. Before entering, Rum wanted to share some information about the basilisk. The basilisk is called the King of Petrification, but although it is dangerous, its abilities and the way to deal with it change depending on the environment. It really can petrify people, but as long as you stay alert to the hallucinations caused by its gaze, you'll be fine. In addition, it is sometimes also classified as a horned cockatrice. Unlike ordinary adventurers, a guide must reorganize information from a calmer perspective and reduce variables to a minimum. Besides that, they also need to understand hunting experience, dungeon ecology, and related scientific knowledge. When working together with a mage, a guide can often play a decisive role, but their own combat strength is indeed rather weak. Not long afterward, the group arrived at that mysterious space. The deeper they went, the stronger the stench of decay became. And this smell was unlike the atmosphere of an ordinary labyrinth. Just as adventurers have ranks, monsters are likewise graded. They are basically divided into lower dash, middle dash, and upper tier monsters. These correspond to the level of danger that beginner teams up to high-ranked teams can handle. A cockatrice at this level already counted as a very strong monster. Kariel was just about to remind everyone, be careful of the monster using its gaze to create hallucinations, when in the next second, the monster appeared right in front of him. Damn it, my body won't move. That sense of oppression was exactly the same as when he had first seen a monster as a child. Akela shoved Kariel away, his figure turning into an afterimage, and with a single slash he split the monster in two. Akela immediately ordered that this side would be handled by them, and told Kariel to go find the children at once. Kariel's heart sank. He could not keep being dead weight. It would not do to keep following along while being unable to help. First observe the situation, then go find the missing children. Just as Ram was nearly swallowed by the monster, he twisted his body and forcibly tore the monster's head off. But Ram discovered in shock that this monster actually had no tail, and the one he had just killed was actually regenerating. That immediately put Kariel on alert. because a cockatrice logically should not have regenerative ability. The reason was unclear, but the situation was undeniably bizarre. But where would a regenerative monster's weak point be? Could it be the heart? Kariel immediately shouted, "Go for the heart! Attack its heart!" After hearing his shout, the two of them began targeting only the heart area. After several rounds of fierce battle, the surrounding monsters were finally cleared out. Although Akela still had doubts about the monsters, at least for now they could continue forward. But just as the group was preparing to go deeper, a suddenly appearing figure made them all freeze in place. Facing the extremely dangerous scene before them, Akela forced himself to speak through his swaying body. He could still move for now, but they had to retreat from here immediately. He gripped his sword tightly and charged straight at the monster. At the side, Kariel's face had gone pale, and his voice carried restrained, unraveling fear. He could not understand it. Why would a siren appear here? In the next second, the siren's bewitching song slowly began to sound, dragging his consciousness little by little into chaos, and Kariel frantically warned himself in his heart he had to stay focused. But in the next second, his vision began to blur. The sharp sound waves tore at him, and he even felt as if his eardrums were about to split. In the midst of the intense pain, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to stay standing. "I can't fall here. It's not time to give up yet. I'll deal with my ears later." On the other side, Akela also failed to block out the song completely, and his consciousness began to loosen. The monster immediately seized the opening and lunged at him with its jaws wide open. At the critical moment, relying on the last of his clarity, Kariel threw himself forward and shoved Akela away, narrowly avoiding the fatal blow. The noise around them grew more and more chaotic, the monsters hissing, the siren's song, and all kinds of warped sounds intertwining together, making their heads throb as if they would split apart. Kariel supported Akela and urgently asked about his condition. He spoke extremely quickly. "It's too dangerous right now. We have to leave immediately." He suddenly realized that Ram, who had been beside them just moments ago, was gone. Very soon, Akela caught hold of Ram on the other side. Afterward, he immediately used divine power to heal the two of them. The crisis eased a little, and Kariel also forced himself to calm down. "We first need to figure out what exactly that bizarre chimera is. It has both a siren song and a basilisk's illusions. There's no way we can withstand two kinds of mental attacks at once, and even worse, it can regenerate. If that's really the case, then we can only aim for the heart. But the problem is, where is this monster's heart? Does it have two hearts?" Kariel fell into thought. The previous cockatrice had been a mixture of snake and chicken. The main body had been the chicken, so perhaps the heart had only ever been in the chicken's torso and never in the snake part. Then this hybrid of siren and basilisk might be structured similarly, or perhaps, like in the previous golem incident, there was a critical part controlling the whole. Maybe they could still use the same line of logic to find a way through. Many times, the answer lies in the most basic common sense. Akela turned to Kariel and signaled for him to make a plan immediately. But judging from the map, to reach the siren's nest, they had to pass through a densely monster-infested area. And there was no way they could endure continuous mental attacks the whole way. So after thinking for a moment, Akela proposed a plan. Someone had to act as bait, draw the monster's attention, and create an opening for the other person to lock onto the siren. Kariel suddenly interrupted him. "Lord Akela, can your sword release its power in a special way?" Akela said that he could charge the sword with divine power, then release all the stored energy at once. Afterward, some divine power would still remain in the blade, enough to inflict a fatal wound. While the two were discussing it, Rum suddenly spoke up. He would be the bait. That way, Akela would be able to launch a surprise attack on the siren from behind. But Kariel proposed a different tactic. Yet time no longer allowed them to keep arguing. They had to move immediately. It was now deep night, the time when this kind of monster was most active. Darkness was a disadvantage for ordinary people, but for Rum, it was instead an advantage. Just then, the monsters launched a frenzied attack the instant they discovered Rum. Rum's figure flashed, dodging the claws coming straight at him, and with his backhand he brought down a heavy blow. His goal was clear: to hold back as many monsters as possible and create an opening for Akela. Just as Rum's punch was about to land on the siren, the air suddenly grew heavy. The monster's pressure came down like something tangible, instantly invading his mind. He suddenly understood. From the moment they stepped into this area, they had already entered the monster's nest. But Kariel had already told Akela the weakness he had inferred. Akela immediately locked onto the basilisk side, then swung the fully charged sword and delivered a decisive strike. Because the monster's main body was precisely the part where the basilisk's heart was located. At the same time, Kariel seized the gap while the hero and the monster were entangled in battle and finally found a chance to search for the missing boy. Next, he sped forward by following that intense smell. He was certain in his heart that was the core area where the monster hid its prey. Before long, a concealed monster nest appeared before his eyes. The missing little boy was curled up in the corner of the nest. Just as Kariel was about to rescue the boy, the monster suddenly appeared in front of him. Even more troublesome, the boy was still some distance away from him. In the next second, the monster attacked him directly. In that life-and-death instant, Kariel did not take it head-on. He twisted his waist and dodged the fatal blow at the limit of his angle. Immediately after, he dashed to the boy's side in a single stride. He hoisted the boy onto his back and ran wildly toward the exit, even though he kept dodging along the way. The enraged monster still chased after him like it had gone mad. As the monster closed in behind him, Kariel decisively leaped down the slope beneath the nest's exit, while grabbing a dry branch at the side. But before he could steady himself, the branch snapped on the spot, and he lost his support and fell together with the boy. At that very instant, Rum caught Kariel's wrist like lightning. Not long afterward, when the group finally returned safely to the village. Fortunately, the missing child was successfully rescued, and the disappearance case that had plagued the village for many days was finally completely solved. Reina looked at Kariel, who was still unconscious, and her heart tightened. If only she could cast 2 spells at once, perhaps she could have provided more support during the battle. The village woman said that, to thank them for saving their lives, the village had prepared abundant food and local specialties. When Guide-sama wakes up, you must invite him to join us. But at that moment, Rum silently melted into the shadow in the corner of the wall. After spending so long with darkness, he was already used to it. Seeing this, the village woman smiled and said, "If you're not denying it, then I'll take that as you agreeing to join." But just as Rum was still lost in thought within the shadows, Akela suddenly said to him, "The investigation results on the monster corpse were in." He signaled for Rum to speak with him in private, saying there was important information that had to be discussed alone. Akela slowly began. Before coming to this village, he had handled a case of a monster attacking humans. Only after investigating deeply did he discover that the monster had not been bloodthirsty by nature, but had completely lost control and turned to attacking humans only because its core had been contaminated by an unknown substance. But this case was even stranger. It was a malformed monster created by the fusion of a siren and a snake monster. At the fusion point between the two monsters, the investigators detected the same unknown substance as in that contaminated monster. All clues pointed to the same conclusion. Both incidents must have been the work of the same mysterious organization. Akela continued. The real point began only now. First, he brought up the mysterious connection between the Demon King and the Holy Sword. Through prophecy, or omens such as the sky being covered by dark clouds, people could know in advance that the Demon King was about to descend. The Holy Sword would also learn through prophecy where and in what place it would appear, so some kind of fated connection existed between the Demon King and the Holy Sword. Although the timing was never precise down to the second, they would generally appear in sync once every 100 years, and this pattern had continued until now, like a law and also like a pact. Until the hero Persian broke that pattern, he slew 2 Demon Kings in succession. The first time was 30 years ago, and the second was 10 years ago. And to face the Demon King twice within the short span of 20 years meant that some change unknown to outsiders must have occurred behind the scenes. But Akela said helplessly, when those 2 subjugations happened, he had not yet been a hero, so he did not know the details. After hearing this, Rum replied, "You mean that law was broken by the adjudicator? But that would only have been the first time the Demon King appeared unexpectedly early." Akela immediately denied it. "I'm not trying to push the blame onto anyone, but after these 2 irregular subjugations, the 100-year law we believe in has already become almost worthless as a reference. Even if a new Demon King descended tomorrow, or the Holy Sword appeared, I would not find it strange." He added, "Of course, these are only speculations. Right now, there is no proof. I can't even clearly see what the situation is going to become. But one thing is certain, this Holy Sword recovery mission will be completely different from the operations we have understood until now." The scene shifts to the main palace of Binet. A brown-haired man reported to the person before him. The preparations had been completed, and the person standing before him was none other than the legendary hero who had slain the Demon King twice, Persian. After speaking with Akela, Rum suddenly felt that there were far too many things he needed to rethink. But when he saw that Kariel had woken up, he also said that, if convenient, he hoped to speak with Kariel alone. After receiving permission, Rum immediately got to the point, because there was one thing that had been bothering him all along. "Why did we aim for the basilisk side when we fought the siren?" Kariel answered, "Things were too rushed at the time, so I didn't have time to explain. But now that I think about it, it's actually very simple. If a chimera can maintain biological activity, then it must have a main core. A siren that breathes through gills could never possibly serve as the main body in a forest without a lake." Hearing that, Rum finally understood completely. Kariel then changed the subject and said he also had a question for Rum. Namely, after they dealt with the bandits, when Akela was greeting the people, Why had Rum immediately gotten onto the carriage? Kariel felt there had to be a reason. Rum said, "Do you remember when we first met? It was when we ran into the bandits. It all happened so suddenly then, so you were probably frightened too." Then he said in a low voice, "A lot of people admire heroes and revere heroes, but they never know what kind of person is beneath the helmet. After becoming a hero, everything I did was always called saving others. But in the end, all it really means is killing without end, slaying monsters, killing bandits, killing until it never stops. Later, I suddenly realized something. When I take off this helmet, I am also just a tool that exists for killing. From that moment on, I became afraid to take off the helmet, and I also became afraid of people's gazes. Those who admire me only see the shell of a hero. In the end, I chose to hide in the shadows. Because the real me is completely different from what they expect. I actually don't hate anyone. I even like them very much, which is why I keep my distance. Because I can't walk up to them with hands covered in blood." At this point Rum paused and said that before he knew it, he had said so much. But he had been bottling up these words for a long time. "Thank you for being willing to listen." After hearing Rum's confession, Kariel lowered his head and thought deeply. In the past, he had only seen the glamorous side of heroes. But now he understood that each of them carried their own pain. But even so, my admiration for heroes hasn't changed. Killing for the sake of killing and killing to save people are fundamentally not the same thing. So Kariel did not agree with what Rum called the dark side of heroes. But he did not make excuses for anyone either. "You've been fighting against that darkness all this time. But the closer you are to the light, the deeper the shadow, right? That means that while you are facing darkness, you are also moving toward a brighter place. It's just that you're looking in a different direction. If you turned around, maybe you would be able to see the light. I hope you can try thinking about it from another angle. And besides, yesterday, you saved me." Hearing those words, Rum sincerely thanked Kariel from the bottom of his heart. In the blink of an eye, it was the next day. After Rum said goodbye to Kariel and the others, he suddenly felt as if he had forgotten something. But compared with whatever detail he had forgotten, what he cared about more was not forgetting the reason he had become a hero in the first place. At that moment, he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the forest. But if he went to investigate it, he might miss the Holy Sword recovery operation. Then he changed his mind. He had not become a hero for the sake of recovering the Holy Sword, so he had to go and see what had happened. Meanwhile, Akela went to the cathedral because of the Holy Sword prophecy. Kariel and Reina decided to take the opportunity to stroll around the nearby streets together. Kariel said to Reina, "Let's each buy what we need, then meet back here." Reina was somewhat surprised to hear that. "Why do we have to split up? Wouldn't it be better to go together?" The image of Kariel carrying her suddenly flashed through her mind, and for some reason her heart sank. She had just gathered the courage to ask Kariel to accompany her. When Kariel had already walked over to a stall across the way, Reina thought to herself, as expected, he still cared more about matters related to heroes. At this moment, he was flipping through a magazine with great interest. The magazine said, "Many years had passed since Hero Persian entrusted the Holy Sword to his disciple Atheniah. But Holy Sword recovery was divided into two parts. The first prophecy was the prophecy of the Holy Sword's manifestation. The second prophecy would reveal the Holy Sword's exact location, and the heroes would receive that second prophecy at a nearby cathedral. Then proceed according to its guidance. Only after retrieving the Holy Sword and returning it to the royal family would the recovery mission be complete." Meanwhile, Rum investigated in the forest for a long time, yet found no trace of any monster. It was only when he was about to head back that a black shadow suddenly opened a gaping mouth and lunged viciously at him. Rum felt as if his body were about to be torn apart. Could this monster be the Blood Knight outside that mysterious organization? But in the next second, the monster actually spoke, "So you are hero, Rum." In a single dash it closed the distance and attacked directly. Caught before he had fully entered the rhythm of battle, Rum could only defend passively. After several exchanges, Rum lowered his body and sank into the shadows. The Blood Knight mocked him, as expected of the shadow hero. "All you know how to do is dodge and hide." Rum knew only the title Blood Knight, and had almost no intelligence on him, except that he specialized in hunting heroes. But after losing sight of his target, the Blood Knight only continued mocking him. For Rum, there was no other choice. He could only widen the distance and look for an opening. After several feints, Rum circled to the rear and launched a surprise attack. But the Blood Knight's armor actually changed, while at the same time releasing sword-shaped energy. Is this a technique that makes the blood in his body circulate at high speed? If this drags on, while I'm waiting for an opportunity, he'll be the one to seize me instead. In this kind of frontal battle, Rum simply could not keep avoiding forever. The Blood Knight warned coldly, "Your little tricks won't work anymore. Don't think that running away can end everything. If you die, someone else will just take your place." Rum replied that he had already given up continuing to hide. "Then become my trophy, Rum." Meanwhile, Kariel was still reading the magazine when he was suddenly interrupted by a voice. "You really like heroes, don't you?" Kariel answered that he liked heroes very much. He also said that there did not seem to be many people who hated heroes, but the mysterious person said she actually did not like heroes very much. That immediately made Kariel puzzled. She continued, reality was not what he imagined. Kariel could not understand it. "I don't really understand what you mean. Then let me ask you a question. Do you see over there? That group of children is playing in the open space, and at first glance it looks like everyone is together. But that child wearing nice clothes and raised in a good environment is the center of that circle. And on the other side, the child in dirty clothes, small and thin, is being isolated outside of it. If you could save only one, who would you save?" Kariel replied directly, "I would save both." But that answer was exactly what the gray-robed person had expected. Most people who knew heroes only through legends would say the same thing. Just like stories where the world can be saved with only a single line, hero legends are always bright, always saving the people. And those who hear the stories are also saved along with them. That is why so many people like heroes. But reality is not like that. Those who failed to be saved never appear in the stories to begin with. That is why hero legends are always bright. Because you cannot save everyone. The moment you are forced to choose, the ending has already been written. Whom to save, whom to abandon, those decisions all happen outside hero legends. Kariel denied it on the spot. Heroes never talk about conditions before saving people. On the contrary, they do everything they can to save them. And hero stories are not fabricated lies, but things that truly happened. Looks like we really can't understand each other. Actually, yesterday, I happened to overhear your conversation with that hero. I'm very curious how you will choose in the end. Hearing this, Kariel froze on the spot. The gray-robed figure said calmly, "Action speaks louder than argument. This time, I'll ask the question through action and let you see the answer with your own eyes." Before the words had even fallen, several black shadows suddenly pounced out and instantly grabbed toward the three people. She said coldly, "Who will you save, and who will you give up? Now we can finally communicate a little, can't we? Can you feel even a bit of the reality I was talking about now?" Reina instantly sensed that something had happened on Kariel's side, and she immediately raised her hand to cast a spell. But subconsciously, she thought, "I have to save everyone," and even she herself had not expected that thought to arise. Had she really been influenced by that idiot Kariel without realizing it? Under Reina's magical bombardment, the gray-robed person was blasted back in a miserable retreat. At the same time, Kariel seized the opening, gripped his dagger, and accelerated fiercely, charging straight at the opponent. The blade thrust toward a vital point, but the gray-robed person raised a hand and blocked it by force. In the next second, Kariel was completely stunned, without any divine power enhancement, and without any medicinal assistance. The opponent's hand, once cut open, regenerated instantly. This bizarre sight was almost exactly the same as when they had fought the basilisk. Before Kariel had time to react, the gray-robed person suddenly counterattacked, smashing a heavy punch brutally into his abdomen. Explosive pain burst through him, and Kariel instantly lost all strength. Seeing this, Reina immediately tried to rush over and support him. But the moment she moved, both of her hands were pinned down by an invisible force, and she could not move at all. The gray-robed person seized the chance, scooped up the child beside them, turned, and sprinted wildly into the depths of the forest. Kariel's fury surged to the top. Enduring the pain, he was about to chase after them. But Reina hurriedly stopped him. Her expression was grave. That person was absurdly strong, and there was no way they could beat them. Right now they had to go get help from the hero immediately. At the same time, elsewhere, Akela had successfully completed the baptism at the church. The accompanying horses had also been prepared and were ready to depart at any moment. At that moment Kariel and Reina arrived in haste. Seeing them, Akela immediately said, "Perfect timing, we're setting out at once." But Kariel interrupted with a face full of urgency. "Something terrible happened. Right in front of us just now, a child was abducted. The culprit was wearing a hood and had some kind of bizarre special power. After succeeding, they already fled into the forest connected to the outskirts of the village. But that forest connects directly to the primeval woodland, so the area is far too vast. With our tracking ability, it would normally take a week. Even traveling at full speed, it could still take 2 days to catch up. But we still have a mission right now, and behind all this there are even more truths that haven't been made public. The situation is extremely difficult." Countless thoughts surged through Akela's mind, forcing him for a moment into a dilemma, and leaving him unsure what to choose. Kariel spoke first. "That kidnapper is most likely connected to the group related to the monsters. The other side is a monster organization we have no way of standing against. Only you, Lord Hero, have the ability to deal with them. Everyone, what I am about to do next is my own choice. Please understand." The scene shifts elsewhere. The abducted child was filled with terror and pleaded in a low voice. "I was only passing by here. Please let me go." The gray-robed person replied calmly, "Don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you. Do you usually get along well with your friends?" The child's eyes dimmed as she shook her head. "I don't know. They all seem like they don't want to play with me, and they always make fun of me for coming from an orphanage. The other children either have strong magical talent or the potential to become warriors. Everyone praises them, but I have nothing." The gray-robed person said softly, "It sounds like you're a lot like I used to be." The child suddenly looked up, her eyes full of confusion. "How are we alike? The difference is that you don't have power like mine." A spark lit up in her eyes at once. "Then can I have that kind of power too? What do I have to do?" "The method is simple, but there is one condition." "Only one condition?" "If I had power, my friends wouldn't laugh at me anymore. Maybe at school, the teachers would acknowledge me too and praise me." The gray-robed person followed up. "There is only one condition. It's very simple. I'll agree to any condition. As long as I can have power like yours, big sister, I can give up anything." Only then did the gray-robed person slowly reveal the truth. "The condition is, become a monster like me. People like us, who are never acknowledged, are never truly saved by anyone. But as long as you possess the power of a monster, from now on, you won't need to rely on anyone." The girl immediately rejected it. "I don't want that kind of power. I just want to get along well with my friends. And even if I run into trouble, Lord Hero will definitely come save me. So I don't need the power of a monster." Hearing that, the gray-robed person's tone suddenly turned cold. And with mockery she said, "There is no such thing as a hero in reality. Look at the situation you're in now. Don't you understand yet?" Meanwhile, Rum was still struggling in battle against the Blood Knight. After narrowly avoiding the other man's attack, he turned and slammed a punch into the Blood Knight's head. But that vicious punch was actually caught firmly in the Blood Knight's bite. Rum pressed the attack repeatedly, only to discover in shock that his attacks were somehow being reflected back at him. But he knew nothing about the Blood Knight's abilities. And just now, the other man had transformed his armor into yet another form. The Blood Knight suddenly smiled, and in the next second he closed in on Rom in an instant, sweeping a claw strike across Rom's helmet, then taking advantage of his imbalance to kick his lower leg. As the Blood Knight turned back around, he followed with another savage heavy blow that tore Rom's helmet apart. And at this very moment, Rom had in fact vaguely sensed it even before the battle began. At the end of this fight, only endless darkness was waiting for him. He did not know who the other people the Blood Knight had mentioned were. Nor did he know why they were doing this, but all he could do now was pray in his heart that his family and friends, and all those who stood against evil, would be protected and blessed, and that boy would forever walk with the light. The scene shifts again, and Kariel has already reached the gray-robed person's hiding place. But the gray-robed person had not expected that he would actually chase her all the way here, and that in his hand he would be carrying a god-grade sword she had never seen before. Before that, Akela had refused to go with Kariel to find the child. Hearing that refusal, Kariel had frozen on the spot. Because this enemy was too strong, and only a hero could deal with it, but more importantly, "Akela, you're a hero." Akela lowered his head and said that precisely because he was a hero, he could not go with them. Recovering the holy sword was the hero's highest priority. That was his duty. Kariel also understood the meaning behind those words. Rather than saving only one child, it was better to recover the holy sword first and save more people later. The hero had chosen the path of saving more people. But did it really have to be like that person said? Could only one side be saved? Kariel could not accept that choice, but he still accepted Akela's decision. After all kinds of unforeseen changes might arise during the holy sword recovery, and restoring the holy sword was the hero's responsibility to begin with. So the task of finding the child would fall to him. But just as the two were preparing to set out immediately, their companions also reminded them to be careful. The enemy may know about the holy sword recovery. You must be careful with what you say. Leave the information gathering about the child to us. Go without worry. Akela also called out to Kariel, then handed him the sword in his hand. But without a weapon, how will you fight, Akela? Don't worry. I can retrieve my sword from anywhere at any time. Also, I need to pass the prophecy on to you. The prophecy says, at the highest place, when your gaze meets the mother of monsters, the existence that pierces her child will appear. But what confused Kariel even more at this moment was, why had she taken this child? Faced with Kariel's questioning, she answered calmly, this was not kidnapping, but giving this weak child the right to choose. The kind of help for the weak you're talking about. Don't tell me you want to turn the child into a monster like you? So what if she becomes a monster? As long as it can save this world that is on the verge of collapse, that is enough. Those words instantly ignited Kariel's rage. If you really cared about that child, you wouldn't use a method like this. You're just forcing your twisted values onto her. After hearing that, the gray-robed person only found him childish. Everyone has stories they cannot speak of, and pain they cannot put into words. Not everyone thinks the way you do. What you call right is nothing more than making choices from a monster's way of thinking. Now that I think about it, it's ridiculous that I spent so long talking to an idealist as extreme as you. Enough nonsense. I'm taking the child today no matter what. Still, your mouth is sharper than I expected. From the moment a person with almost no combat strength dared to chase me all the way here. I knew it, you definitely had companions following you. In the next second, the gray-robed person attacked first. After dodging her attack, Kariel raised his hand and threw a punch at her. But she easily dodged it and struck back in return. Kariel steadied himself, gripped the sword in his hand tightly, and slashed at her with an upraised arm. Meanwhile, Reina had also finished her spell and blasted magic toward the gray-robed person. Just as the magic sphere was about to hit, a tornado-like force suddenly spiraled up around the gray-robed person, blocking all of Reina's magic. She muttered to herself in a low voice, becoming a monster was not the only bad thing, but at least this power was real. After seeing her fighting style clearly, Kariel immediately warned Reina, she should be a human-monster hybrid. The monster part is a xylophagus type, so test her first with burning magic. After that, I'll tell you more based on the situation. The two of them immediately assumed battle stances. The spell pattern in Reina's palm also began to form. After the gray-robed person casually threw the child aside, the monster's true form instantly manifested. In the next second, she lunged straight at Kariel with killing intent. At the same time, spikes suddenly burst out of the ground on the other side, shooting straight toward Reina. Kariel raised his sword and moved to defend. In the next second, he directly cut down the threats around Reina. At that moment, a huge sphere of light had already formed in Reina's palm. She pushed her hand forward, and terrifying magic instantly blasted toward the gray-robed person. But when the magic struck the opponent, Reina discovered in shock, it was almost completely ineffective. Seeing that, Kariel also grew suspicious. Did she have some other objective? But no matter what, this person had already abandoned her human identity. They absolutely could not let their guard down now. The gray-robed person said coldly, I've already shown you the gap between us clearly, and you still don't intend to give up? If you insist on continuing, then I'll get serious. In her heart, Reina quickly assessed the situation. Basic burning spells were ineffective, so she had to switch to something else. Then Kariel turned and asked Reina, when will the cathedral support arrive? Reina replied in a low voice, if they still haven't come after all this time, they were probably blocked on the way by monsters. As soon as she finished speaking, Reina hurled out an even stronger fire spell. Its power was indeed greater than before, but the damage it dealt to the gray-robed person was still limited. But this is already an intermediate spell. Just then, Kariel saw the key point. Those plants blooming from the monster's body were its true form, and they were fire-resistant plants, camellias. This kind of plant is common in forests built to resist and prevent fire, and it also has strong regenerative ability. Small flames won't hurt it at all. No matter how many you use, it won't help. Reina, you have to use your strongest fire magic. Reina gritted her teeth. Advanced magic required time to chant. Kariel replied immediately. During that time, I'll protect you, until you can launch the high-tier spell. Watching their little exchange, the gray-robed person's eyes completely darkened. She said coldly, in the past, I never knew what patience meant. But now, you've exhausted all of mine, so die. As soon as the words fell, several vines instantly lunged in front of Kariel. He slashed several times, and although he cut through a few of them, he was still wounded by this bizarre assault. But before Reina's magic was complete, no matter the cost, he had to hold out. The gray-robed person sensed this and suddenly shifted the focus of her attack toward Reina. In the blink of an eye, vines and spikes wrapped around Reina layer upon layer. Kariel flashed over to support her, then swung the sword at the fastest speed he could. That strike did indeed resolve Reina's crisis, but he himself was tightly bound by a huge vine. The gray-robed person violently twisted the vine she controlled, and tearing pain instantly shot through Kariel's entire body. Looking at Kariel, who had nearly lost the ability to fight, the gray-robed person felt they were nothing more than ants she could crush at will. But just then, a strange sound reached her ears. The girl who had been wrapped up was using the fireball in her hand to melt away the surrounding plants little by little. Realizing something was wrong, she immediately cast a spell in an attempt to stop that attack. With Reina's shout, a huge, blazing fireball blasted straight toward the gray-robed person. The instant the fireball drew near, its light was dazzling like the sun. At the moment the high-tier fireball struck, the gray-robed person suddenly became dazed. Where was she? She saw the chair beside her, and memories surged up uncontrollably. This was the place where she used to watch her younger sister perform with her family. Even in the darkness, her sister had still shone so brightly it hurt the eyes. If one listened carefully, one could hear her enchanting singing voice. And if one followed that voice, she would be standing there, drawing away everyone's attention with her presence and her voice. But my sister's life and mine were completely different. I had no special talents at all. I was just an ordinary person. But we grew up in the same home, and we were even twins. Our family was poor, but our days were simple, and we were happy enough. Until the moment my sister stepped onto the stage. Our ordinary life began to warp little by little. After that, we moved away from our old home and into the city. The quiet school we once knew also became noisy. At that time, I still did not understand just how special my sister was. I only saw that everyone kept talking about her, saying she was like a genius. But to me, she was just a lovely child. When our father told stories, she would also become completely absorbed in legends of heroes. But one conversation changed everything. Mother said to my sister, a noble from the royal family was willing to build a stage for her. If her performance succeeded, she might become a new noble. The letter sent by the nobles proved that my sister really was exceptional. She accepted all the praise, while I only felt myself becoming smaller and smaller. I had actually always denied my sister's influence. But the conversation I heard that day forced me to face reality. From then on, I could no longer treat my sister as casually as before. Later, I happened to find a new piece of clothing and put it on without thinking. But why had that piece of clothing been set aside by itself? Only then did I remember, it might have been a birthday gift for me. But when Mother saw me wearing the new clothes, she flew into a rage at once. Those are your sister's clothes. You're completely useless to this family. All you do is cause trouble. It was the first time I had ever seen Mother so furious, and I was filled with guilt. I thought I had to apologize to my sister. She was so kind that she would definitely forgive me. But my sister had already known everything. She said she had lots of clothes, and that it did not matter if one was missing. Mother had gotten angry only because she had been under too much pressure lately. My sister forgave me. To ease the mood, I suggested we go watch a play about a hero saving a princess together. But my sister refused me, saying she needed to practice, and before leaving, she tossed out one sentence, "Who still watches outdated plays like that now?" I suddenly felt that everyone was changing. Was I the only one left standing still? Since that was the case, I stopped clinging to the heroes in stories. Because I had someone more dependable than any hero, my father. He would not favor my sister just because she was exceptional. No matter how busy he was, he would still tell us stories. But on the very night after father finished telling a hero story, a gigantic monster unlike anything I had ever seen descended. The village was almost crushed by its enormous body, and my leg was pinned beneath the collapsed wreckage. I heard father shouting, and I screamed desperately for help. But the moment father saw me, he turned and went the other way. I could not believe it, and the worst thought surged into my mind. Had father heard my sister crying for help? I did not want to believe it, and still screamed with all my strength. But no matter how much I shouted until my voice tore apart, in the end, the person I trusted most never came. The person closest to me was clearly just nearby, and yet it felt like there was a distance between us that could never be crossed. The explosive force of the high-tier fireball turned into thick smoke, and at that moment, Kariel could not see anything. And because the strain on Reina was too great, she collapsed unconscious on the spot. Right now I have to get Reina back to the church for treatment as quickly as possible. And the abducted child still hasn't appeared. But what exactly is this monster? It's still regenerating without end. As long as the true body doesn't die, the burned body will keep reviving infinitely. At this rate, even the fire will be hard to put out. Just then, the soldiers who had come as reinforcements arrived. But that thing's whole body had already been swallowed by flames, and the fire was still spreading wildly. Even the supporting clerics were shocked. Its regeneration speed was beyond imagination. If they did not retreat now, everyone would be swallowed by the flames. But Kariel still had not seen the slightest trace of the child. And the scene in that sea of fire left even the gray-robed person stunned. It was because of her that things had come to this point. I have to find a way to save them. But with my body like this, I can't get close to anyone at all. And isn't this exactly what I went through myself? So a hero who can save everyone really exists only in fairy tales. That's why I wanted to fight for those who had been abandoned, so that no one else like me would ever appear again. But in the end it still turned out like this. Why did it become like this? I'm such a useless person. All I can do is hide in a corner and cry like a joke. It shouldn't have been like this. It's because of someone like me that everything was pushed out of control. I'm sorry, little one. I'm sorry, everyone. At the very moment she was swallowed by pain, Kariel actually charged straight into the sea of fire. That sight froze her on the spot. But danger followed immediately after. Amid the roar of the flames, the wreckage of the roof was just about to crash onto the child. Fortunately, Kariel made it in time. He forcibly rescued the child. He really jumped in. He really rushed into the fire and brought the child out. This person, he actually did exactly what he said he would. If he had been there back then, would he have reached out a hand to me too? In her dazed state, she saw an image so gentle it hurt. Why did you pull me up? Because you needed help. I really did need help, but I can't do anything. And I'm not pretty. Every day I'm compared to my sister. Every day I'm compared to my sister. I'm just a useless burden. You couldn't possibly want to save me. You couldn't possibly want to save me. Yes, I heard your whole story. For me, there is only one reason to save someone. You asked me for help. As long as you speak up, I won't give up on you. Really, do none of the things I said matter? Can you really save me? Really, thank you. I thought a person like that didn't exist at all. That they would only exist in fairy tales. But you would even reach out a hand to someone like me. A hero who can save everyone, so you really do exist. At the moment Kariel held the sword and reached out his hand toward her. Something he had always firmly believed in suddenly began to crack. He had thought that the only obstacles on a hero's journey were monsters, were battles. But for some reason, the girl before him called herself a hero. Even Kariel could no longer tell whether the sword he thrust forward was aimed at a monster or at a human girl. Seeing the scene before him, Kariel instinctively threw the sword to the ground. You're not a hero, so don't go helping other people. My mother used to say that to me all the time. Aren't those people the kind of monsters that just snatch people away and eat them? Whenever I looked at those strange people, Mother would always tell me to pretend I hadn't seen anything. And she said someone else would come save them. All this time, Kariel really had done as he was told. He had clearly promised to listen to his mother. But when he saw the expression on that child's face, his body moved before he could think. And every time, his mother would scold him for hours. Kariel could no longer clearly remember what happened afterward, and only a vague shadow remained. At that moment, Reina suddenly woke up, interrupting his memories. Reina, you've been using magic too often. The strain on your body must be heavy, right? Reina said she had been treated at the church and was already much better, though her body had not fully recovered yet. Kariel's emotions suddenly sank. He had originally thought this journey was only for revenge against monsters. I thought only monsters lay ahead, but that monster wore an expression that looked like it was begging for forgiveness, just like the face I saw when I was a child. But even when she made that expression, I couldn't stop the sword in my hand, because I was afraid. I was afraid of that fire, so I couldn't stop swinging either. Why have I never had the right to choose? Why do I always feel like I'm being dragged along by something? Reina argued back. No one could do every single thing perfectly. Kariel said in a low voice, that person called herself a hero in the end. But I had already given up on becoming a hero long ago. If I really were the kind of hero she said I was, maybe everything would have been different. My friends and my village wouldn't have ended up like that. But the possibility of me becoming a hero is almost zero. And yet no matter how I think about it, I still can't seem to let go of becoming a hero. Not long afterward, Kariel and Reina headed toward the labyrinth Echidna. Akela had said that the place in the prophecy was the highest point where one's gaze meets the mother of monsters. The highest point spoken of by the mother of monsters, Echidna, should be the top of that tower. And to enter the labyrinth, they still had to pass through several checkpoints. Do you see that tower? That's our target. Behind the tower lies the contaminated land. Look carefully. The sky looks as though it has split open. This place is called the entrance to the demon realm. Legend says the demon king appears from there. Suddenly, Kariel stared in a certain direction, his brow tightening in pain. That chilling gaze. Whose is it? Then he explained to Reina. That feeling is like making eye contact with some being on the other side of the demon realm. Kariel could not understand why it felt that way. He only knew that the chill had suddenly crept over him. Soon, the two arrived at the checkpoint guarded by soldiers. But without royal permission, no one could enter here. Reina reported Akela's name. He requested that we take part in the Holy Sword recovery operation. But the guard did not seem to know anything about the Holy Sword recovery mission, and still refused to let them in. Monsters are gathering right now, and the situation is chaotic. Leave immediately. Unexpectedly, the moment those words fell, Reina excitedly said that they could fight too. Although she was still forcing herself a bit, as long as she rested a little more, she could join in. That statement instantly set the guard off. What nonsense are you brats talking about? Take your boyfriend beside you and get lost already. Reina still wanted to explain, but someone beside them suddenly spoke up and interrupted. Turning toward the voice, they heard the person say, "Companions of Hero Akela? Then that's no surprise. It seems they're the same as us, followers of a hero." The moment the guard saw who had arrived, he was instantly shocked. If even you are here, then that means that person is here too, doesn't it? That's right, Hero Asanaya has already arrived here. Elsewhere, the soldiers faced off against the trolls, and battle was on the verge of breaking out. At that moment, one person stepped out of the formation and ordered the archers to hold their fire for now. When he gave the signal, everyone was to fire at once. You all withdraw from the fight first. After saying that, he drew the twin blades at his waist, and actually charged alone straight at the monsters. In the next instant, one troll was cut clean in two on the spot. Immediately after, he moved like the wind, his twin blades flashing left and right, and in one breath cut down a small group of trolls. He was too fast, and the soldiers were stunned on the spot. They had not even seen clearly what had happened. And the one who had just slain the trolls was none other than Hero Asanaya. He was the only disciple who had studied swordsmanship under Sword Saint Persian, and also the hero who had personally obtained the holy sword and inherited all of its symbolic meaning. Just like his title suggested, he loved battle, and his combat ability ranked in the top 3 among all heroes. So he was always the first to be sent to the front lines or to core missions. Hearing that a hero of that level was nearby, Kariel felt both relieved and involuntarily nervous. Soon, the next day arrived, and Kariel lightly tapped Reina on the shoulder. He pointed ahead and said that person looked like the girl who had helped yesterday. So the two decided to follow her first. As they passed through the military camp, they did not expect that the girl was already waiting for them ahead. Kariel first thanked her for what had happened before, but Reina said they still had not found the group. The girl suddenly turned around and asked her companion behind her for his opinion. "We can let you join the party, but first I need to know what your classes are. My younger brother is about your age too, and he nearly died in a labyrinth before, so I can't take risks." Looking at that person, Reina felt he resembled the apprentice warrior she had seen before. Unexpectedly, in the next moment he said that he was very interested in the class of guide, because his younger brother had been gravely injured in a labyrinth last time. He had been hurt so badly that he was almost dead, and the only reason he survived was because of that person. At first, his brother had looked down on the other person for being a guide, but that person had never given up on saving them, and that was why his brother survived. Someday, he wanted to meet that person in person and thank him face to face. He had heard that even a cleric had nearly been stabbed by bandits at the time, and that person was the one who had blocked the attack. So he also wanted to truly understand the class of guide. His younger brother also wanted to adventure with that guide again, but because he was always dragging others down, he had been blaming himself ever since. But when I asked my brother that person's name, he just wouldn't say. I only know the other person was a guide. But no matter what, someday when I meet him, I'll definitely repay him. Reina smiled and looked at Kariel. By the sound of that description, it was obviously you. Kariel's face grew hot, and then he said he did not know who that person was either, but that person must be very strong and certainly worth learning from. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them. "Soup's here." The girl carried over a bowl of bizarre-looking food and said seriously, "You have to eat your fill before entering the labyrinth, or you'll get so hungry you can't walk. But let me be clear first, I can't guarantee the taste. If you won't eat it, I'll make you eat it." The two of them painfully said that they would finish it with smiles on their faces. Looking at her, Kariel asked, "By the way, you came to find us, so it probably wasn't just to thank us, right?" The girl admitted, "We want to ask whether you have any news about Lord Akela, but we're outsiders, so it's easy for us to feel out of place, and we're not in our best condition either." She nodded. "Then let's go together until you find that lord. Still, you two look very young, yet you can become companions of a hero, which means your abilities must be unusual." Kariel said that he was only an apprentice, but this companion of mine has been recognized by the Magic Academy, and she's very reliable. The girl looked a little surprised. "That really is beyond my expectations. I'm high rank, and he's mid rank. We're childhood friends with Asanaya. But Kariel, why would Akela bring beginners like you as companions?" Kariel said, "Maybe it's because we have the qualities of a hero, just kidding. He must have his own judgment." The girl continued, "Aren't you curious about the meaning behind adventurer ranks? Why is it that even though Kariel's physical abilities are clearly so strong, he ended up becoming a guide instead of a warrior?" She raised a hand and signaled. "I'll explain it clearly now. What is called chi flows through the human body. Majors call it magical power. Different people have different constitutions, divided into inner circulation types, outer circulation types, conversion types, and so on. These categories aren't arbitrary. They directly determine what class suits you and what rank you can reach. Let me use an example so you can understand. Suppose there is a strong Kariel here and an ordinary mid-rank adventurer, and the two fight barehanded. Who do you think wins?" Reina thought for a moment. Apprentice rank Kariel could not possibly beat a mid-rank adventurer. The answer was revealed. Kariel would definitely win. Reina froze on the spot. Here's another example. Kariel with a longsword against a mid-rank adventurer with a club, assuming their technique is the same. Who wins the duel? Reina said, "Obviously Kariel. He can even win barehanded, and now he has a weapon too." The girl shook her head. But in reality, as long as the opponent makes no mistakes, Kariel's chance of winning is almost zero. Having guessed wrong both times, Reina fell completely silent. "How is that possible?" The girl explained, "Unless someone had a special constitution, the physical difference from apprentice to mid-rank, and even to high rank, was not very obvious. The reason was simple. Most people's physical upper limit was about the same. The key lay in constitutional type. Kariel was an inner circulation type, so he could not infuse chi into a weapon. And talented adventurers were mostly outer circulation types, capable of pouring chi into their weapons. But being able to infuse it did not mean certain victory. The true core was more complicated. Weapons were consumables by nature. The more they were used, the more easily they were damaged, and their blades would grow dull. But once you completed a connection and used your body to perceive the weapon, another phenomenon would appear. The more you swung it, the sharper the blade became instead, and the greater its durability. The principle was like muscle. You connected your chi to a lifeless weapon, and gave it the traits that only living things possessed. That way it would not deteriorate, and might even grow. Through this, one could determine which class suited you, and what rank you could attain. In Kariel's case, his physical ability was already almost at its limit, and he had already done everything he could. But differences in constitution determined the upper limit, so he had no choice but to give up the warrior path, which had a hard limitation. And on top of that, with only ordinary equipment, he might still be able to hold out against humans. But when facing monsters, obvious limitations would appear. And for him, the threshold for connecting with a weapon was absurdly low. Weapons were also affected by constitution. Kariel added, I can explain that part. When I choose equipment, constitution really is important. But there's not enough time right now, so I'll explain it next time. At that moment, the soldiers announced that they could enter the labyrinth now. The girl looked at the two's thin clothes and asked whether they wanted to pick out some warmer clothing. Reina did not feel cold, so Kariel went alone to pick out clothes. I didn't expect to see you in a place like this, Sir Knight. It's been a long time. How have you been? I'm adventuring with a hero now. But adventure is all the same, struggling through mud everywhere. I told you not to walk this path, and especially not to become an adventurer. By the way, are those children your new companions? We're only traveling together temporarily, but they're too young. After today, I'm not sure I'll ever see them again. Won't you stop them? I couldn't even stop my own younger brother. What else can I do? Not long afterward, at a single command from Asanaya, the party crossed the snowy mountain, and finally reached their destination. At the instant he saw that tall tower, Kariel's breathing caught under the pressure of its height. But the current situation was strange. The Holy Sword had appeared, but the Demon King had not. In order to recover the Holy Sword, which had manifested for unknown reasons, the heroes had gathered today at the massive Echidna Labyrinth. And among those who had arrived today, a new Master of the Holy Sword might be born. If the Master of the Holy Sword was born today, that would also mean that the Demon King might likewise be born. The Echidna Labyrinth had 7 floors. Each floor was guarded by children of Echidna such as Hydras, Cerberus, and Sphinxes. The monsters on each floor changed randomly. But the top floor never changed. It was personally guarded by Echidna, the mother of monsters. At that moment, Kariel looked up at the tower. Just standing outside it was already enough for the oppressive pressure to tighten around him. But the moment he thought of fighting alongside heroes, he forced himself to calm down again. Before long, everyone entered the first floor. The guards on the first floor had already been waiting for several hours, and when they heard footsteps, they thought the people above had returned with the Holy Sword. But when they followed the sound, they discovered that the one who had come was Asanaya. Asanaya also noticed that someone had entered before them. He immediately asked the guards why the Holy Sword had still not been taken. They haven't come back yet. The guard said they had gone up several hours ago, and no one had come down since. Asanaya frowned. This was not normal. He pressed further. Which heroes had gone up? The guard said he was not completely sure, but there were 3 heroes among them. If even they haven't retrieved the Holy Sword, then we're going up now. But just then, another guard hurried over to report. That person had arrived too. Hearing that news, Asanaya's expression showed obvious surprise for the first time. Elsewhere, Kariel and Reina, who were still moving forward, were suddenly stopped by someone. Because she had just heard that hero Akela also did not seem to be here. But I can't be 100% sure either. Follow if you want, I won't force you. But no matter what, a very troublesome person has entered the labyrinth. If you're with him, I won't hold back. Hearing that, Kariel's mind raced. Who exactly was this uninvited guest? And Akela was not here. Now that I think about it, the sword Akela lent me is gone too. Looks like he took it back. At that moment, Rena stepped in front of Kariel and said urgently, we can prove that we're Akela's companions. Kariel, quickly take out the sword Akela gave you and show it to them. But Kariel said that the sword had already disappeared. Just then, Rena noticed that the girl was actually smiling. Your reaction was so cute. It reminded me of my younger sister. I was only joking. I know you weren't lying. Just don't cause trouble. Rena immediately grew even more annoyed. They had actually been treated like children and teased. But come to think of it, we don't even know each other's names. Then let's introduce ourselves properly. My name is Anis. Nice to meet you. Looks like we'll be acting together for a while. I'm Kariel, but can I call you Big Sister? The moment he said that, Reina instantly broke down. When we first entered a labyrinth, I told you to call me Big Sister, and you completely ignored me, because you look younger than I do. The scene shifts to the area of the second floor. When Asanaya saw the newcomer, the first thing he said was, long time no see. I was wondering why there weren't any monsters along the way. So it was you who cleared them out, Resent. Long time no see, Asanaya. You were the first hero I ever met, weren't you? By the way, couldn't you clean up a little more neatly? The monsters are already dead, and you know how my skill works. Resent, did you feel that presence too? I did. It seems someone entered here with ill intent. We need to raise our guard. I came here for 2 reasons. First, to obtain the holy sword. Second, this place is closest to the gate to the demon world. Looks like we sense the same presence. That presence feels like something on the level of a demon king. Elsewhere, the group arrived at the entrance leading to the 3rd floor, but Ines was puzzled. Why were there 3 doors on this floor? Kariel explained, there should be a Cerberus on the 3rd floor. Each door leads to a different tower. If you open one door, you'll summon a single-headed fang beast. The trick is not to let the 3 single-headed Cerberuses meet. If they combine, they'll turn into a huge 3-headed monster. That's what the book said, but I've only read it once. Sounds like a good challenge. Watching the 2 in front standing very close to each other, Rena could not help wondering what exactly they were talking about. The group quickly gathered together, but even the 2 heroes could not determine which door was the correct one, so they decided to split up. Watching them walk straight into that door, Kariel realized the pace was even faster than he had imagined. They had already reached the 3rd floor now, and as long as heroes were by their side, it would not take long at all to reach the 7th floor. On the way, Kariel asked Ines, since you're childhood friends with Lady Asanaya, do you know why she became a hero? Ines slowed her speech. This story may not be as sensational as you imagine. Kariel immediately said, that's okay, I'm just curious. Ines said, we grew up in the same village, and we were the same age. If you want to know why Asanaya became who she is today, you have to go back to our childhood. Ines recalled, back then, she loved chatting, and Cinnamon chased after people and caused trouble all day long. But Asanaya was completely different. Most of the time, she was sleeping. Objectively speaking, Asanaya was talented at everything, and precisely because of that, she became bored very easily. Until one day, that calm was broken, and everything changed. Reyna could not help cutting in. Was the village attacked by monsters? Cinnamon immediately shook his head. Not monsters. It was an important person, Hero Persian. He had most likely come to the village the time to wipe out the powerful monsters in the surrounding area. When Persian's party passed through, the whole village was cheering, but Athanaya's reaction was very different. After the procession ended, everyone else's excitement gradually faded. Only her eyes were still shining. Then she said the words that would decide her whole life. She was going to become a hero. From then on, Asanaya was like a different person. She threw all her time into training. And in the end, she really did it. She became a hero admired by everyone. Ines admitted that even now, she still could not clearly explain what Asanaya had felt that day. Then she emphasized that Asanaya had never been a reckless person. She had definitely not become a hero just because it looked cool. And because of that bond, the 3 of them were still as close today as they had been in childhood. Of course, that was only part of it, not the whole truth. But the group had already walked a long way, and along the route, let alone a Cerberus, they had not seen even half a monster. Rena thought deeply. Maybe all the monsters had been drawn to the other 2 towers. Elsewhere, Asanaya caught a faint sound that was drawing closer. Is the sound coming from behind, or ahead, or from some other direction? This is troublesome. Asanaya's heart sank. If she was not cautious enough, they would be attacked from both sides. The moment that thought arose, the disturbance behind her confirmed her judgment. Asanaya reacted like lightning, instantly sidestepping to lock the monster by the neck, then exerted force and hurled its entire body away. Immediately after, she chased in with a punch, smashing hard into the monster's mouth. A dull impact exploded. Then she followed through by slamming the monster heavily into the ground, crashing it down directly. But unexpectedly, even after taking such a heavy blow, the monster still was not dead. Struggling to its feet, it opened its mouth full of fangs and lunged viciously at Athanaia. Instead of retreating, Athanaia charged straight forward and clamped one hand onto its upper and lower jaws, forcing its mouth open. She stared at it, her voice cold as a blade. Are you Cerberus? You're the one who wants Cecil's life, aren't you? Then I'll give you what you want, my way. Before the words had even fallen, Asanaya suddenly exerted both arms. Following the line of the monster's mouth, she tore it cleanly in half by sheer force. After dealing with that monster, Asanaya suddenly remembered there was still another person in the labyrinth. She immediately turned back to the group and asked where that person had gone. Cinnamon said, that person may not be with us, but for safety's sake, we should still go check. Asanaya rejected it outright. No need, we wait here. Just as no one noticed anything, a strange sound suddenly came from the entrance to the 5th floor. The heavy door slowly opened, and a pitch-black figure was standing in the doorway. Resent cried out on the spot, a monster. Asanaya immediately corrected him. Don't be stupid, that's a hero. The moment she finished speaking, the shadow asked in return, "Do you really take me for a monster?" The black figure's tone was teasing. "I see. Resent, your eyesight gets worse with age." Resent looked helpless. "But I'm not even 30 yet." Right after that, the two of them almost spoke at the same time to ask the shadow, "Helium, what are you doing alone in a place this dark?" Helium looked pained by the questioning. "Can you ask one at a time? You're making my head spin." He explained that he had just been scouting ahead and had discovered that this floor was full of doors and passageways everywhere. As he saw it, this was the true labyrinth. And up to now, he had not encountered a single monster either. Seeing this unfamiliar hero, Kariel was full of questions and turned to ask the person beside him who he was. The attendant immediately introduced him. This hero's nickname is Helium, and he was formally invested at a very young age. His core skill comes from the sun's holy power, so he has always been highly sought after. Some groups even worship him with almost fanatical devotion. Hearing that Helium had become famous at an age even younger than his own, Kariel silently lowered his head and fell quiet. Reina noticed his expression and teased softly, "Are you jealous of him?" But just then, a sharp and piercing voice suddenly rang out from the darkness. "What exactly do you mean by jealousy?" That sudden voice made everyone tense instantly. They all looked toward the source of the sound, only to see, in the shadows above the labyrinth, a huge and bizarre figure staring down at them. It looked down upon the group. That was the Sphinx of the 5th floor. The Sphinx slowly said, "Let me remind you first, here, the light of wisdom is stronger than any blade. Instead of warming up, you should loosen those stiff brains of yours. Now, whoever will answer the question, step forward here." Resent frowned. "If we can't solve it, we can't get through?" Helium slammed his greatsword into the ground, his presence flaring up. "What's there to fear? I'll smash that door down right now." At that moment, Kariel suddenly spoke. "Wait, forcing the door open here probably won't work." Helium was stunned on the spot. "Who dares disregard my power?" The Sphinx sneered. "Whenever more than 5 humans gather together, trash always gets mixed in. But thanks to the one who knew where they were, I saved myself quite a bit of trouble. As for the fools who still don't understand, I'll explain it once. This place is a labyrinth woven from countless doors and passageways, but that isn't all. The labyrinth keeps changing. You won't find the exit, and even the entrance will disappear. This is that kind of place, and among these nearly infinite doors, only I know the correct answer. Do you understand now? I am the supreme existence here. Even this tower must obey my will. So lowly beings like you should learn to respect me." Helium coldly shot back. "For such a tiny creature, you sure have a big mouth. No matter how strong you are, can you stand higher than the sun?" The Sphinx's eyes widened in fury. "Even if only a sliver of sunlight falls through a crack, that girl clad in armor and chosen by the sun is still looking up at me." Helium frowned. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Resent raised a hand and patted his shoulder. "Calm down, Helium." The Sphinx's expression darkened. "Meaningless chatter is pointless. Before I grow bored, I will guide you." It stretched out its claws, pushed forward the man who stopped that girl from acting rashly. The moment those words were spoken, the soldiers immediately began searching around for the one who had spoken earlier. Only then did they realize that the person was actually a guide. Reina reached out, trying to stop him. "Kariel, you don't have to force yourself." But Kariel stared at the Sphinx and asked, "If I answer wrong, what happens?" The Sphinx propped its chin on one hand and smiled lightly. "I nearly forgot to mention the most important part." He grinned wide. "You're not asking because you don't know, are you? But what does knowing change? You want to climb this tower. If you answer even one word wrong, you die." Reina's expression changed, and she looked at Kariel anxiously. "Maybe you shouldn't agree to this." But Kariel stepped forward. "I have to agree." He looked back at Reina. "Right now, I have no choice." Because the Sphinx was an intelligent monster capable of communication. As long as dialogue was still possible, I couldn't treat it as just an ordinary monster. I have to remember what was written in my father's notes about sphinxes. Stay calm. I have to stay calm. I have to think. At the same time, the 3 heroes exchanged looks, all finding the situation painfully ironic. The Sphinx sneered. "First time carrying something like this, right? The tension is written all over your face. Since you've got some courage, I'll start with a question. Listen carefully. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?" Hearing the question, Reina visibly relaxed. "I've heard this riddle before. It won't be hard for Kariel." But she was also puzzled. Why was Kariel not answering immediately? At that moment, cold sweat was pouring down Kariel's face. "It's actually asking me this one." Seeing Kariel stay silent, the Sphinx curled its lips and laughed. "Hard, isn't it? I pitied you, so I chose the easiest one. But for the sake of my reputation, you'll have to try harder. Want me to give you a hint?" Elsewhere, the 3 heroes spoke in hushed voices. "Looks like in the end we'll have to rely on force." "What's the answer? Is it a monster?" "Wait, don't rush, it might have another motive." At the same time, Rena silently prayed in her heart. Kariel must have his reason for doing this. Just then, Kariel suddenly spoke, his voice crisp and clear. The answer is a human. The 4 legs in the morning are ignorant childhood. The 2 legs at noon are strong youth. The 3 legs at night are old age leaning on a cane. The Sphinx raised the corner of its mouth slightly. Correct. Resent muttered in a low voice. That's it? We got through just like that? Nothing went wrong? The heart hanging in Rena's chest finally settled, and she could not help smiling. But in the next second, the Sphinx burst into loud laughter. Don't celebrate too early. Don't act as though you've solved all my riddles already. Relax if you want, but don't let down your guard. The next question starts immediately. Resent froze. There was another question? Cinnamon was also confused. The Sphinx's riddles. There was more than one? The tension that had just eased from Rena's brow tightened again, and her expression grew more worried. Kariel's expression was grave. A Sphinx's questions were never limited to one, but the answers in his father's notes were only a few. After thinking it over, he could only gamble, flatter the Sphinx and make it ask easier riddles. The Sphinx looked down at Kariel from above and actually agreed to lower the difficulty. Then listened carefully to the second question. Immediately after, the Sphinx threw out a strange riddle. There is a pair of sisters, and each gave birth to the other. Who are they? The instant the riddle left its mouth, Kariel immediately sensed something was wrong. This was clearly a well-known classic riddle. There was no way the Sphinx did not know that. So the question could not possibly be that simple, and he had seen it in his father's notes. But even so, that did not mean the Sphinx was asking it without any direction. His father's notes leaned toward guide knowledge, yet this riddle was abnormally ordinary. That instead proved that his earlier probing had worked. The Sphinx was not a monster acting only on instinct. So Kariel calculated silently, delay on purpose for a bit, then give the answer. Then he pretended to think hard. A moment later, he respectfully addressed the Sphinx as my lord and gave the answer, day and night. The Sphinx acknowledged that the answer was correct, but then added calmly, it still missed the core somewhat. Then its tone shifted. You don't need to treat me as some utterly evil beast either. It has been far too long since a human addressed me with honorifics. Kariel answered softly, his tone sincere. Even a child has things worth learning. Different races should also learn from one another. The Sphinx chuckled lightly. You really are the type who can move people with words alone. The moment that mocking-sounding line fell, Kariel immediately clenched his teeth and suppressed his anger. The Sphinx smiled and explained. He had misunderstood. She was only praising his proper conduct and meant no malice. Kariel reminded himself inwardly. He absolutely could not let the Sphinx catch him losing his temper. He raised his eyes and continued respectfully. Your guidance is very helpful to me. I will remember it. A trace of approval flashed in the Sphinx's eyes. You truly are different from other humans. It then shifted the topic and asked again. If the differences are too great to bridge, then even if they belong to the same species, can dialogue still be possible? And I must also judge these compliments of yours. Your words sound pleasant, but I can feel it. You are hiding a purpose. Kariel's heart jolted. Had it seen through him? Or could it read minds? Just as Kariel fell into confusion, the Sphinx spoke again. I will tell you this, the essence carried at the birth of writing. Humans pursue roots out of curiosity. To directly demand the answer is itself the wrong attitude. The joy of solving a riddle lies in digging out the answer with your own hands. You can understand that too, can't you? But before you solve all my riddles, I have already seen through the intention hidden in your heart. But now, the final question. You will need to think carefully. It can bring the dead back into the world, and it can make you laugh at times and weep at others, and can even return you to your youth. It is born in an instant, yet can accompany you for an entire lifetime. Kariel's heart sank. I've never seen this riddle before. But on second thought, the description was too absurd. If there was an answer, he could not cling to the literal meaning. He had to understand it abstractly. Did bring the dead back mean true resurrection? Or was it a metaphor? Kariel leaned more toward metaphor. And how should return you to youth be understood? For the moment, he could not grasp a clue. Magic might slow aging, but he had never seen a spell that truly made someone young again. The answer could provoke joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness, which meant it could genuinely affect emotions. In other words, it ought to be something that truly existed in reality. And born in an instant, yet able to accompany you for life. What was it? So he decided to stop relying on pure reason and instead use imagination to seize the answer. This question tested creativity, not formulas. He slowly closed his eyes, and the child he had once been appeared in his mind. His parents' voices seemed to echo right beside his ears, and all the moments that had made him ecstatic, and all the moments that had broken him, surged up together. Born in an instant, yet never dispersing for a lifetime. So that was it. The answer was the very thing he was experiencing now. Kariel opened his eyes, his expression suddenly darkening, and enunciated the answer word by word, memory. The Sphinx slowly nodded, a fine answer. But before you said it aloud, I had already seen through the hidden intention in your heart. and you should know that I rarely show myself. But today I had a premonition that something special would happen, so I appeared of my own accord. I never expected to receive such a precious gift. As repayment, I shall give you a great gift as well." As the words fell, the Sphinx's expression suddenly twisted, and staring at Kariel, it said in a low voice, "Child, in the future you will stand in a place higher than anyone else. And you will never forget me." It raised a hand and snapped its fingers. As the snap rang out, that heavy door slowly opened as well. After everyone had passed through to the other side of the door, Kariel turned to Reyna and told her to go first, and that he would follow immediately. Afterward, his gaze remained locked tightly on the Sphinx. Because in myth, it was said that after creatures like this had their riddle solved, they often chose to kill themselves. But the Sphinx before his eyes was completely unharmed. What exactly had it done? After thinking about it, Kariel forced himself not to dwell on the matter anymore. Even if the expression it had worn at the end was strange, there should not be any connection between him and that kind of monster. But when he stepped out through the door and saw the internal structure of the labyrinth, he was still completely stunned. If that door led directly to the final floor, then who was it that had arrived here ahead of them? At the same time, on the 7th floor of the labyrinth, the moment Kariel stepped in, he felt the ground trembling. The person beside him said softly, "When we first came up, there wasn't this kind of movement." Elsewhere, what surprised Hero Persian was, who exactly had solved the Sphinx's riddle? After Kariel solved all of the Sphinx's riddles, he suddenly felt an indescribable irritation. The instant he stepped onto one stair, his footing slipped and he almost fell. Rena hurriedly supported him. "Kariel, are you okay?" Cold sweat covered his forehead, and he forced himself to say that he was fine. But inwardly, his heart tightened. That last thing the Sphinx said, could it really not have been nonsense? At the same time, several heroes were hurrying toward the depths of the 7th floor. But ever since entering the 6th floor, not a single monster had appeared along the way. Asanaya's heart sank. Had someone arrived before them? In the next second, a terrifying force suddenly swept over them, and she immediately gave a low, urgent order, "Everyone get down." When they finally saw clearly, they discovered that the one standing ahead was actually Hero Persian. Everyone quickly bowed in salute and paid their respects to Lord Persian. Persian slowly turned around and spoke to them. "It has been a long time since I've seen all of you gathered together. I'm pleased." Asanaya was the first to ask, "Lord Persian, we assumed you came to retrieve the holy sword. Have you already found it?" But Persian said something even stranger. He had not discovered the holy sword's manifestation at all. The group immediately huddled together and discussed in low voices. "The holy sword hasn't appeared?" Then split into groups and searched carefully nearby. Then Resent asked Asanaya in a deep voice about the details of the whole matter, and what had happened on the Demon King's side. Because before coming, he had clearly sensed the Demon King's presence. Helium was puzzled. "Why didn't I sense it? What did it feel like exactly?" Resent said it was hard to describe. It was as if the Demon King was there, and yet somehow not there. It was not a physical body, but more like a state of existing without yet having manifested. Helium was even more confused. "Resent, what are you talking about? I don't understand at all." At that point, Asanaya lowered her head and thought for a moment, then looked up and asked Helium, "You didn't even feel that presence, so what exactly is your reason for coming here?" Helium suddenly clenched his fists, and arrogantly said, "Because he was great, the holy sword would definitely choose him." Asanaya and Resent both froze on the spot. Resent looked at Asanaya and stated directly, this time he would not stop her. "Do whatever you want." But Asanaya gritted her teeth. "No, you have to stop me. I don't want to become the hero killer. Resent, use all your strength to stop me." Elsewhere, Cinnamon was still chatting with Kariel about where exactly the holy sword could be. At that moment, the old knight they had met before came over smiling to greet them. Cinnamon immediately asked, "Where did you go? We haven't seen you the whole way." The old knight grinned. "There's a thing called rear support. I'm old now, so they won't even let me stand at the front of the party." At that moment, a nearby conversation caught their attention. From that direction came a voice of dissatisfied complaint. But in the next second, the two people talking seemed to notice their gaze. One of them said in a low voice, "They're coming this way." Cinnamon did not want trouble, so he gently nudged Kariel. But the two of them instead walked forward on their own initiative and introduced themselves. "I am Knight Late. I greet you." And the woman at his side also spoke, "Knight Pepra. It is a pleasure to meet you." The old knight gave a bitter smile. "Thank you, for still being willing to treat me with a knight's courtesy." The female knight said calmly, "Anyone who saw you stripped of your knighthood would sympathize. But haven't you reached this point through your own choices?" Then Kariel looked at the three of them talking and asked Cinnamon, "Those uninvited guests you mentioned, are they these knights? But I can sense that the relationship between heroes and knights isn't good, which is different from what I imagined." "That's right. On the surface, both heroes and knights are under the royal court. But in essence they are different. Knights are directly appointed by the royal court. Heroes are personally chosen by the Holy See, and that includes the hero who bears the Holy Sword. The Holy See continuously creates heroes to fight against the savage Demon King. But for political reasons, the Demon King appears on roughly a 100-year cycle. From the Demon King's appearance until its complete destruction takes about 50 years. During those 50 years, the Holy See holds absolute authority. In the 50 years after that, the royal court takes power again. Kariel nodded to show he understood. But when people who had never experienced the threat of the Demon King became the majority, the royal court would grow stronger again. Power would naturally ebb and flow with the Demon King's appearance and destruction. Cinnamon's tone grew heavier, but the Demon King appeared twice in a row, which directly shattered that formerly stable flow of power. Normally heroes and knights would have almost no friction, but because of this abnormal situation. Thinking of the old knight, Kariel asked, "Then why is that man so unwelcome?" But at that moment Ines suddenly interrupted. They had to immediately head deeper into the 7th floor and continue searching for the Holy Sword. After Cinnamon said goodbye to Kariel, Kariel turned to Reina and suggested, "We don't have anything to do right now. Want to go look for the Holy Sword together?" Reina immediately agreed. Waiting around was boring anyway. At that moment, the two of them turned their eyes toward Persian in the distance. When Kariel saw Persian's immensely oppressive back, he blanked out for an instant. He had never imagined he would meet this legend here. Just then, a burst of hurried footsteps approached from behind. Kariel came back to himself, and Helium was already standing in front of him with a dark expression. Kariel muttered inwardly, "I don't think I've offended him, have I? And also, what is with this height?" Helium glared at Kariel's gaze, his tone smoldering with irritation. "Were you just thinking I'm short? What kind of attitude is that? You dare look down on a hero? And you're the one, aren't you, the one who kept muttering behind my back just now?" Reina frowned. She stepped forward and rebuked him coldly. "Mind your own business. Interrupting people like that, is that what a hero is supposed to do?" Kariel immediately reached out and covered Reina's mouth, then hurriedly apologized to Helium and said that he would watch his wording in the future. Helium gave a cold snort, waved a hand, and arrogantly tossed out one sentence, "Be more careful next time." Kariel looked at his departing back and added that something like that would absolutely not happen again. And deeper within the labyrinth, a mysterious figure was hiding in a dark corner, coldly observing their every move.